Picture this. Our boy pulls up to the Empire's most prestigious magic academy, with his folks hyped to enroll. But guess what? They don't even catch a glimpse of the front gates. A couple of stuck-up aristocratic snobs cut them off right out of the gate. They smirk, spitting out that filthy peasants don't belong at Arcanist Academy. Just to stir the pot, one of them shoves his mom. Hard. She hits the dirt, and Louis he totally sees red, ready to crash out right then and there. He's itching to rearrange their faces. But his parents pull him back. They beg him to keep his eyes on the prize, the entrance exam, and not throw his future away over some street brawl. So he bites his tongue. Getting zero reaction, the bullies practically pout. They were desperately craving an excuse to beat down a commoner, just for kicks. But that window closes. What these arrogant fools don't realize, though, Louis is mentally carving a blood oath. The second he secures his spot in this school, he is going to make those elitist jerks suffer. Brushing off the disrespect, he beelines it to the testing grounds. We're talking thousands of hopefuls swarming the area, and pretty much everyone towers over him in age. Honestly, though, he couldn't care less. Suddenly, the headmaster steps up to the mic, officially kicking off the trials. Round 1. A brutal stair climb, heavily guarded by the Academy's terrifying upperclassmen. The golden tickets to pass are chilling right behind these student bouncers. And get this, only a clean 1,000 rookies are making it through. It is totally first come, first served. The moment those passes vanish, the game is over. Boom. The timer starts. The mob sprints up the steps, totally convinced this is going to be a walk in the park. Until one totally unhinged senior steps forward to serve up a literal nightmare. He unleashes this suffocating dark energy. A crimson wave of pressure explodes over the crowd, paralyzing the rookies and dropping them to the pavement like flies. Loudspeakers blast their contestant numbers, branding them with a massive disqualified. The kids in the back are completely tripping out, having zero clue what just hit them. But our boy, he reads the room instantly, standing dead center in the panic. Our guy casually strolls forward, calling out that nobody actually got hit. That flex. It was just raw aura meant to mess with their heads. Anybody with a fragile ego or weak mental game just folded under the sheer terror. The upperclassman locks eyes with Louis immediately. He clocks that this kid is built different, that he's actually got some serious grit. Still, the elite ranks are already packed, and this snob absolutely refuses to let some street rat pollute their bloodline. Louis instantly writes this guy off as a massive clown. Smirking, the senior mutters that since a peasant dared to show up, he is going to make him suffer. He cranks up his aura to the max, blasting a suffocating, bloodthirsty pressure. The weaker kids practically choke on the paralyzing fear. But for Louis, it is literally a light breeze. He just stands there on the steps, flashing a cocky grin, thinking this so-called killing intent is a joke. Sure, it might make regular NPCs wet their pants, but for a guy who has survived real hell and grinded his stats in the shadows, it is absolutely nothing. Flexing his pure martial arts, Louis violently dashes up the steps, slicing right through that oppressive energy, with nothing but insane mental fortitude. Pure rage is fueling, itching to show these pampered aristocrats what real, unfiltered bloodlust actually feels like. He launches himself like a missile at the senior, winding up a devastating hook while the entire crowd watches absolutely gagged. Even the upperclassman is totally shook, baffled that a nobody just tanked his ultimate flex. But a millimeter from shattering the guy's nose, Louis slams the brakes. He smirks as cold sweat drips down the senior's pale face. The crowd completely loses it, mind blown that this kid is what, barely 13 or 14, yet he is packing so much raw sauce that he casually brushed off a lethal aura attack and nearly knocked a top-tier student out cold, all without casting a single spell. But our boy, he couldn't care less about their dropped jaws. He just ghosts past the senior, snatching his token and muttering that this whole circus is getting old. Obviously, the senior's ego shatters at the disrespect. Boiling with rage, he throws a cheap, blind-sided haymaker right at Louis' head. But in a split second, Louis effortlessly deflects it. The bully is left trembling and completely glitched out. A literal peasant just parried his heavy strike, using 0 mana. Before things get bloody, his voice booms across the courtyard, officially crowning our boy as the very first applicant to clear the trials. He drops a heavy reality check on the crowd inside these walls. Blue blood or dirty boots, everyone is on an even playing field. You are human before you are royalty. The humiliated senior awkwardly bows, and even Louis gives a chill nod of respect to the old man. The headmaster then strolls right up to Louis, giving him his props. But mid-sentence, he freezes, locking his eyes onto the kid's unique hair color. He drops a massive hint that it is extremely problematic, keeping the actual reason totally vague. Louis instantly gets a bad vibe, his internal alarm bells ringing like crazy. Swallowing his paranoia, he keeps his cool and demands to know what the old man is getting at, but the principal shuts him down. Leaning in with dead serious eyes, he whispers that if Lewis actually enrolls, he will personally brew a highly classified elixir to mask his dangerous genetic traits. Lewis is totally lost for a second, and his mind races. Is the headmaster messing with him, running some kind of twisted mind game? He shakes it off. Whatever the old man is plotting, it can wait. Right now, he has got a second trial to crush. Lewis turns his back and walks off, leaving the headmaster in the dust. Meanwhile, that stuck-up noble he totally humiliated earlier is glaring daggers at him. The headmaster has literally never interfered in a test before, and he just broke protocol to save a regular nobody. The rich kid is seething, swearing he is going to make Lewis pay for wrecking his ego. Fast forward a bit, and the survivors of round 1 get herded into a massive indoor battle arena for the next phase. The brutal reality. Out of 20,000 hopefuls, only a cool 1,000 managed to scrape by. And spoiler alert, most of them are pampered aristocrats with top-tier training. Lewis is just chilling at the back of the pack when bam! Some dude deliberately shoves him. Big surprise, it is another arrogant rich kid looking. The guy smirks, spitting out that no one is going to swoop in to save him this time, tossing in a nasty jab about his class, just to be toxic. Lewis does not even flinch, he is ice cold. Then the bully's little sidekick chimes in, yapping about how if the headmaster had not played hero, Lewis would already be kicked to the curb. But this time, our boy claps back. He straight up calls the guy a clown, pointing out that a grandmaster like the headmaster obviously has way better taste than some bottom-tier trust fund babies. The bully snaps. His fragile ego cannot handle the disrespect, and he threatens to lay Louis out cold. Louis just gives him a mocking smirk, which pushes the rich kid totally over the edge. He launches a wild punch right at Louis's face, but Lewis is already a ghost. He dodges at the very last microsecond, snapping back with a flawless martial arts counter that sends violent shockwaves ripping through the bully's nervous system. It is Meridian Severance, a devastating spiral strike that totally short-circuits the body's energy, and the arrogant noble gets launched across the room like a broken rag doll. The rest of the squad scrambles to their wrecked buddy, instantly making a massive scene. The guy who just got folded desperately thrashes around on the floor. His eyes go wide. His arm is totally dead, and his legs refuse to work. Pure panic takes over. He screams that Lewis used some kind of cheap poison and threatens to snitch to the academy guards. On the spot, Lewis casually calls him pathetic. No poison here, bro. Just pure unmatched skill. Honestly, Lewis has been seriously holding back, all because he promised his mom he would keep his head down. But everyone has a breaking point. Push him and you get wrecked, or worse. Louis lives by one solid rule. If you throw hands, you better be ready to catch them. He winds up his fist to finish the job. But out of nowhere, a hand clamps onto his wrist, shutting him down. It is the Academy's ultimate golden boy, Lord Kane. Kane drops some hard facts. They are literally in the middle of an exam, so they need to chill out. He warns that if Lewis keeps throwing punches, he is getting instantly disqualified. That hits Lewis like a bucket of ice water. He violently yanks his arm out of Kane's grip, shoots the golden boy a lethal glare, and turns his back. Kane then pivots to face the screaming squad of bullies. He flashes them an icy, dead-eyed stare, ordering them to shut their mouths and back down. The rich kids instantly fold, scrambling away, though their eyes are still practically burning with toxic rage. Lewis tracks Kane's every move, convinced this guy is just another privileged elite, flexing his status to keep people in line. But Kane completely flips the script. He praises Lewis, calling him insanely strong and fearless, and actually pitches the idea of teaming up if Lewis is down for it. Before Lewis can even process that, a massive mob of fangirls swarms Kane, desperately begging to join his squad because they are totally obsessed. Within seconds, half the guys are crowding him too, acting like wild groupies. Lewis files that little interaction away in his brain, but his downtime is officially over. Out of nowhere, a blinding tornado of light erupts right in the middle of the Coliseum. Principal Smith materializes from the glow, booming his voice across the room. The second phase is a raw power check. Before anyone can even blink, a strange burning symbol ignites on everyone's chest. The candidates stare down in pure panic, clueless about what is going down, but Kane instantly clocks it. It is a high-level Earth attribute spell. A crushing wave of gravity slams into the crowd. Their bodies feel like they just got buried under tons of concrete. Dozens collapse. Even the golden boy Kane grinds his teeth muscles, trembling as he fights the insane pressure. But then he spots something absolutely wild. Someone is literally strolling through the gravity field like it is a walk in the park. Kane forces his heavy head up, watching Lewis casually march onto the main stage, locked in and ready to dominate the next trial. The headmaster's jaw drops slightly, but a deeply satisfied smirk creeps across his face. Proving everyone wrong yet again, our boy shatters the insane pressure. He just keeps walking forward, absolutely unstoppable. After grinding martial arts for 3 or 4 years, the crushing gravity is still, and the pressure keeps stacking. Kane can literally feel his bones screaming under the weight. So when he catches Lewis chilling there, no formal training, he cannot fathom what kind of crazy stats our boy is hiding. Right then, Principal Smith drops the rules. Only the candidates who are still on their feet get to advance. With a quick flick of his wrist, he summons an entire arsenal of weapons, telling anyone who wants an edge to grab one. Our MC casually strolls up and claims a heavy-duty blade, while the rest of the NPCs are out here fighting for their lives. Half of them can barely stand, let alone wield a weapon. Boom, Phase 2 kicks off, and there is a massive plot twist. Principal Smith announces they are spawning bound life forms. The crowd is totally clueless. But before anybody can even ask what that means, the principal just vanishes. Out of nowhere, someone screams to look up. They tilt their heads and spot these neon blue blobs. They are raining from the sky, splatting all over the arena like giant bouncy jelly drops. Honestly, they look completely harmless, especially after dealing with those terrifying upperclassmen. The system quickly lays out the rules. Landing a hit gets you 1 point, dodging scores you 2, and actually obliterating one nets you 5 points. Your leaderboard rank is entirely based on your score, and only At first, these arrogant kids just laugh, calling the slimes absolute fodder. They blindly rush in, expecting an easy win. But the second a weapon connects, the slimes instantly enter aggro mode. They speed up drastically and just body check the student. The impact is brutal. That cute, squishy vibe vanishes instantly as they go completely berserk. Launching into one competitor after another, sheer panic infects the arena as a massive swarm of slimes takes over. The entire battlefield dissolves into absolute chaos. High above the madness, Principal Smith and the proctors are analyzing every single move. One proctor reports that some heavy hitters from elite bloodlines are in the mix, including top-tier prodigies linked to the Arank. She also name-drops the Durahan house, but points out some wildly unpredictable wildcards scattered among the rookies. She specifically zeroes in on the kid who completely dominated the first trial. Principal Smith just smirks. He admits that guy has definitely caught his attention. But the proctor brings up for a solid minute, Lewis has not budged an inch, and they are stressed he is going to flop right out of the gate. The other rookies notice his AFK status and figure he finally cracked under pressure. But they are dead wrong. Right as a slime winds up to blast him, Lewis is just standing there, cool as ice, halfway turned around. His situational awareness is off the charts. The exact millisecond the slime tries to bulldoze him, our boy slips right past it. In literally 2 seconds, he makes it look like a breeze, leaving everyone shook by his insane mobility. The slime starts crackling with energy and fires off a second strike, packing way more firepower this time. Suddenly, a whole squad of them rushes him at once. But honestly, Lewis is totally dialed in for this. Off-screen, he was putting in some hardcore, brutal prep work. He actually forced his buddies to pelt him with solid rocks. They were terrified of injuring him, but he hyped them up to test a wild theory. Back in his past life, he cooked up a crazy hypothesis. If he could hardwire his brain to blast sensory data straight from his parietal lobe to his cerebellum, he could mathematically predict any incoming strike, giving him zero input lag. If he could constantly map out trajectory, so he tanked a literal hail of rocks, firing up his ultimate martial arts technique. He mapped the flight path of every single projectile weaving through them with pinpoint, terrifying accuracy. His friends were absolutely paralyzed. They swarmed him, begging to know what kind of cheat code he just used. Lewis casually dropped the name of his technique, Void Combat Calculation. It went totally over their heads, but for him, it confirmed his massive brain play. Cut back to the second exam. Our MC triggers Void Combat Calculation once more. As the monster squad blitzes him, his brain instantly crunches their speed and attack angles. Yeah, they are insanely fast and hit like trucks, but here's the catch. They can only launch in a dead straight line. That makes their geometry completely predictable. With minimal footwork, he glides through every single strike, racking up 8 points in a flash. Then he unsheathes his blade and unleashes his force slash technique. His sword just melts right through the slimes. Slicing them completely in half, his score skyrockets. Kane is just standing there. Even the elite proctors snap their heads toward Principal Smith in pure disbelief. They are completely stunned by how accurately Lewis reads the battlefield like an open book. It totally clicks in Kane's head. Lewis isn't some random peasant. The dude is an absolute beast, a master-level fighter, packing insane combat mechanics. Kane instantly craves a team-up, knowing damn well that rolling with a powerhouse like him is a massive shortcut to the top. Suddenly, another slime lunges straight for our guy. Lewis winds up for a lethal strike, but out of nowhere, another blade crashes into his. They are gunning for the exact same prey. Lewis glares daggers at the intruder, totally annoyed that Kane is trying to swipe his kill. Waving his hands frantically, Kane swears he is not trying to leech off our hero, but rather he pitches a massive brain play farming points as a duo. Lewis narrows his eyes, totally skeptical, since backstabbing is basically the name of the game in this arena. Flashing a cocky smirk, Kane dares him to turn this whole bloodbath into a high-stakes point farming that immediately hooks our boy's competitive side. He smirks back and locks in, tightening his grip on his hilt. Lewis flexes his aura, promising to unleash his true, unfiltered power. While the two warriors stand back to back in the chaos, a squad of salty, privileged nobles spots the perfect opening to snipe the commoner and farm easy points. A cowardly archer lets loose a volley of lethal arrows right at Lewis's blind spot. Our boy shifts his stance. The whole stadium gasps in horror, fully convinced he just got obliterated. Yet the smoke clears, and our hero has not even flinched. The fatal shot completely failed to connect. He casually snatched all 3 deadly shafts right out of thin air with his bare hand. Kane snaps his head back, asking if Lewis is good, completely enraged by the incredibly toxic cheap shot tactics. Hearing Kane call him trash totally triggers the elite sniper. Boiling with rage, he chants his ultimate spell Double Arrow Edge, and violently unleashes a massive barrage. Kane goes into overdrive, weaving through the assault, and slashing the magical projectiles out of the sky with flawless swordplay. But one single razor-sharp arrow sneaks past his defense, zooming directly for his heart. A sudden burst, shutting his eyes tight, he prepares to feel his chest get blown open. But the agonizing pain simply never hits. Snapping his eyes open, he spots Lewis standing like a total guardian angel right in front of him, crushing the deadly arrow in his iron grip. Thick, dark blood drips down Lewis' palm, but the badass does not even wince. He coolly tells a freaking out Kane to chill, revealing that the cowardly attack was locked onto him the whole. Up in the VIP booth, an eagle-eyed judge squints, pointing out that strike was straight-up attempted murder, not an exam tactic. He pressures Principal Smith to kick the toxic nobles out immediately, but the headmaster casually raises a hand ordering him to sit tight. Smirking slightly, the principal predicts the bullies are about to get themselves wrecked anyway. Plus, he wants to sit back, watch the fireworks, and deal with the fallout. He then orders the staff to stockpile high-tier healing potions, sensing deep down that Louis is about to start snapping some serious noble bones. Down in the dirt, our hero turns to his new bro, and casually asks, obviously that sport does not even exist in this fantasy world, but Lewis is absolutely hyped to give a live demonstration. Right on cue, a massive slime rockets directly at his face. Pivoting like a major league slugger, he swings his massive blade. Crack! The electrified slime turns into a high-speed cannonball, launching across the arena and violently crashing right into the snobby squad. The ringleader tanks the full explosive impact. You can literally hear his ribs shatter as he is violently blasted out of bounds, catching an instant humiliating disqualification. But Louis is not even close to done. He blitzes forward like a demon, closing the gap on the surviving elites, who are completely paralyzed after watching their one panicking kid tries to whip around. But his reaction time is pitifully slow. Lewis smoothly backflips over the guy's head and fiercely roundhouse kicks a bouncing slime ball squarely into his jaw. The brutal shockwave caves his face in, rattling his teeth, as he is violently launched into the spectator stands. Another elite bites the dust. Now only the final coward is left. Dripping in cold sweat, his eyes dart around frantically, completely terrified of where the Grim Reaper will pop up next. Total panic hijacked. In a flash, our guy ghost steps right behind him, chillingly whispering for him to turn around. Yet even staring death in the face, the arrogant brat refuses to drop his ego. He keeps spewing toxic trash, screaming that upperclassmen are gods, and that filthy peasants need to bow down and stay in their lane. Blinded by his own raging superiority complex, he misses the shadow stepping into his path. The very next second his ankle catches, and he pathetically faceplants right off the edge of the arena. The mastermind behind the trip, Kane. With that hilarious tumble, the final piece of trash catches a big fat disqualification. Brushing his hands off, Kane strolls over to give Lewis a massive shout-out. He immediately locks eyes on the hand Louis used to catch the deadly arrow, but to his absolute surprise, it is already tightly wrapped up in a fresh bandage. The two warriors slap a solid, ringing high five. Flashing a smirk, our boy admits that for a snobby aristocrat, Kane is actually incredibly cool. The dynamic duo instantly bolts a massive horde of gooey monsters hot on their heels, Mid-sprint, Kane practically begs Lewis not to lump him in with the panting. He drops some heavy lore, explaining that, while the Empire is packed with legendary bloodlines, he hails from the absurdly overpowered Aranka clan. These are not just rich kids with trust funds. These top-tier houses, because of their god-tier legacy, they flex an insane amount of political muscle. We are talking world-breaking authority that straight-up challenges the kings, the highest nobles, and even the elite magical academies. Lewis mentally files away these sick new names and titles, completely captivated as they keep throwing hands. Meanwhile, the snobby bullies are locked onto Louis. Watching him totally demolish the competition gets under their skin. No way are they letting some low-born peasant snatch up their precious points, so they dive-bomb Lewis and Kane all at once. Kane's hardcore loyalists instantly freak out, seeing their precious young lord in the crosshairs, and they sprint in to form a human shield. In a flash, pure, absolute chaos erupts around our duo. Kids who just came to flex their skills are now throwing each other under the bus. The whole arena instantly devolves into a fierce battle royale, with absolute mayhem everywhere. Just a few feet away, Faye is just chilling, watching the madness unfold like it is a movie. She waves her bestie Miliana over, hyping her up to jump in and start wrecking the other elites. Lewis is out here looking like a ninja, smoothly sidestepping slimes, with his insanely clean martial arts. But he clocks the vibe shift students are straight up hunting each other now. He instantly realizes that if he keeps farming points like a boss, he is going to paint a giant target on his own back. Right then, he catches Miliana casually slicing through the nobles like they are butter. Faye is also putting on an absolute masterclass, and right next to her, a red-haired dude named Neil Gunn, looking like an absolute wild card. This kid is swinging a massive hammer like a madman, literally sending people flying while screaming that smashing students is way more fun than farming slimes. He is practically a walking natural disaster, bulldozing through opponents left and right. High up in the VIP stands Principal Smith, and the proctors are glued to the madness. One panicked proctor begs to pull the plug, terrified the rich kids will get totally wiped out. But Smith, he is not having it. He smirks, claiming that watching these prodigies tear each other apart is prime entertainment. Another examiner sweats, warning that failing too many elites will spark massive backlash. Smith just shrugs it off. He straight up says he could not care less about the public outcry. He wants to see this wild showdown through. Then, out of nowhere, he literally drops right into the center of the arena, instantly pulling the plug on round 2. He shouts that the final scoreboard for the survivors will drop in a bit. He dispels the hardcore earth magic, and medics start passing out healing potions to the battered kids. Lewis stares at his vial like it is liquid gold. A basic potion like this costs 3 whole silver coins, way out of his broke boy budget. Kane catches his starry-eyed look and asks what is up, jokingly promising not to bully him even if he snags the win. Moments later, Smith finally drops the massive leaderboard. The snobby nobles start grinning when they cannot spot Lewis's name anywhere. But here is the crazy twist. The top 5 absolute gigachads utterly shattered all Academy records, so Smith is hyping them up with a separate announcement. Coming in hot at 5th place is the unstoppable Miliana Royce. 4th goes to our boy Kane Aranka, while the fierce Faye Durahan clutches 3rd. Bagging an insane 87 points, Lewis steals 2nd place. Kane's jaw literally hits the floor, not just because Lewis outscored him, but because no commoner in history has ever thrown down like a god like that. Still, Kane takes his massive L like an absolute gentleman, admitting he lost their little wager and asking what his punishment is. Lewis just smirks, telling him he will cash in that favor after the exams. Then, Smith drops the bomb for 1st place. With a mind-bending 88 points, the crown goes to that unhinged, red-haired menace, who was just treating the arena like a mosh pit. Neil is out here still smiling like an absolute maniac. The whole crowd is whispering about his god-tier strength, especially since this random nobody just clowned on the actual Durahan heir. Miliana starts sweating when she sees Faye literally shaking with rage, but Faye instantly locks in, gulps down her pride, and boldly claims she is dying to lock horns with a beast like that. Meanwhile, the upperclassmen are seething, absolutely mauling that their precious elite freshman just got swept by The proctor is mind-blown, muttering that a commoner snagging 2nd place has not happened since the school literally opened. And the craziest part, both of these absolute units came straight out of an orphanage. Principal Smith drops some wisdom, revealing the Arcanist Association secretly runs that orphanage, proving that real raw talent comes from the streets, and totally wrecks the myth that bloodline is everything. With that mic drop, he orders the survivors to march on to the next challenge. On the way, Kane brings up how Lewis was literally 1 point away from clutching 1st, openly wondering who would win in a one-on-one. Lewis, however, totally ghosts the question, too chill to care. Within minutes, the squad rolls up to the massive training grounds. Principal Smith hypes up the ultimate finale, a hardcore survival test, a pure battle royale for emblems, and starts tossing them out to the squad. The mission: hoard as many of these badges as humanly possible, and literally any dirty trick in the book is 100% legal. Drop your badge and you are instantly out of the game. When the dust settles, only the top 10 players with the biggest stash are walking through those academy doors. Kane shoots his new buddy a serious look, dropping the news that they need to split up and fly solo for a bit. He slips him a massive warning. Everyone who crushed the earlier ranks just painted a giant target. Basically, he needs to watch his six. Lewis locks eyes with him and swears he is making it out of this forest alive, whatever it takes. He sees right through the Academy's twisted game. Dropping those second exam rankings was a calculated move to spark a total bloodbath. Up in the stands, Principal Smith flashes a wicked grin, practically daring these kids to unleash absolute chaos and flex their— After all, only the absolute beasts survive this meat grinder. The siren blares, and Lewis is already prowling through the dense woods, hyper-fixated on the fact that his dream academy is literally inches away. Losing is 0% an option, but out of nowhere a shadow blocks his path. It is one of those entitled aristocratic NPCs, lunging at him with pure venom, screaming that Lewis completely clowned the entire upper crust during the last trial. A quick glance over his shoulder reveals two more rich kid goons, rushing him from the blind side. He is totally cut off, with zero backup coming to save him. What these clueless scrubs do not realize is that Lewis is not the prey here. Honestly, these bozos are the ones who desperately need a bodyguard. His eyes dart up, catching a sniper perched in the canopy, drawing back a heavy bowstring. It hits him instantly. The shady reception staff absolutely doxed his coordinates. With the whole squad locked and loaded, the lackeys swarm him. Lewis just dances through their strikes, slipping past their blades like an absolute ghost. A violent surge of energy ripples through the air. Instinct takes over, and he barely deflects a brutal blast with the flat of his sword. His brow furrows. That was not a normal weapon, and he has zero clue what just hit him. Before he can process it, the main thug is back in his face, spitting literal death threats. But Louis is not about to fold. He starts laying into the entire mob, dodging and weaving, until— bam! Another one of those insane invisible shockwaves blasts toward him. He sidesteps it by a hair, but now he is getting seriously ticked off. Turns out one of these spoiled brats is spamming magic arrows from a distance, cackling at Lewis, like he is a complete joke for having zero mana. But that smirk vanishes instantly, melting into pure rage as our guy casually weaves through every single magical projectile. Inside, though, Lewis is sweating bullets. Magic does not follow standard physics, so he cannot predict the flight path. He is flying blind and has to lean entirely on his raw, hard-earned— He locks into a legendary stance called Sen no Sen. It is an elite counter-timing technique, basically striking the microsecond before the enemy attacks, turning their own— The ringleader absolutely loses it, barking at his entire crew to just rush him all at once. The whole pack barrels toward our boy like wild dogs. Oh, but he is locked in now. He flows through the chaotic dogpile, slipping their clumsy swings, and using his blade to expertly redirect their own kinetic energy, forcing the goons to crash into each other in a spectacular train wreck. Even when the caster spams another volley of magic arrows, Lewis dips at the absolute last millisecond, baiting the spell right into one of the charging thugs. He physically chucks the stunned lackey aside, like literal garbage snatches up a dropped spear, and totally snipes the archer hiding up in the branches. Boom. One by one, he systematically wipes the floor with the entire squad, snatching up their shiny badges and letting out a breathless chuckle. One stubborn tryhard actually tries to rally his battered buddies for round 2. Out of nowhere, Kane swoops in, slamming his heavy bow right into the guy's skull and flooring him. Kane is just chilling in the branches above, casually spectating the bloodbath. He mentally notes that our protagonist is absolutely helpless when it comes to spellcasting. The surviving bullies are shook, freezing in absolute panic, since Kane was supposed to be completely out of the picture. Kane flexes that he already dismantled their little ambush squad elsewhere. The loudmouth aristocrat keeps yapping, so Kane just brutally bonks him on the dome with his bow again, until the dude finally shuts his trap. Dropping down from the canopy with effortless drip, Kane lands smoothly, while Louis just sighs. Finally Kane shrugs it off, roasting the attackers as bottom-tier snobs, trying to flex day 1 spells, calling the whole rescue mission a total breeze. He flips Lewis the final badge he looted, then steps uncomfortably close. He drops the casual act warning that if Lewis keeps pulling aggro like this, he is going to get wrecked, and low-key offers to team up. Our guy instantly shuts that down, brushing him off and insisting he handles his own messes without— From the shadows, Faye has been binge-watching the entire drama. She steps out slow clapping to mock Lewis's whole lone wolf honor code. But she is definitely not here to make friends. Cutting straight through the nonsense, she locks eyes with our boy, and bluntly demands a one-on-one duel. Kane immediately panics, whispering to Lewis that this chick is literal royalty, the granddaughter of the Doulahan family's terrifying Grand Master. Lewis side-eyes his buddy, asking if he has ever acted. Kane gets super awkward, nervously coughing and violently denying any friendly connection, but sheepishly admits they have crossed blades once. He tries to save face, making excuses about totally dropping his guard and slipping up during their spar. Lewis instantly bursts out laughing, roasting him for taking a massive L against her. Kane aggressively starts backpedaling rambling excuses. Before the boys can keep roasting each other, Faye aggressively cuts in, rolling her eyes, and telling them to wrap up their little bromance and stop flirting on the battlefield. She throws down the gauntlet one more time, radiating pure boss energy. Kane frantically whispers a final warning. She is already a cracked magic user, literally sitting at the apprentice tier, which is insanely overpowered for teenagers. He begs our boy to just ghost her and stick to grinding out those badges instead of committing suicide. Faye gets visibly irritated, mercilessly flaming both of them for acting like massive cowards. She spits that Kane is just projecting his own past trauma and totally infecting Lewis with loser energy. Knowing he's practically guaranteed to take an L, she actually has the nerve to call Lewis a coward. That instantly gets under his skin. Even Kane is visibly annoyed by the absolute disrespect. But Louis steps right up, his ego officially bruised. He stares her down, claiming he's been dying to witness how a top-tier noble family throws hands. Challenge completely accepted. Faye flashes a wicked smirk, admitting she totally digs his crazy vibe. To keep things on an even playing field, she announces zero magic will be used. Then boom. Without skipping a single beat, she blitzes forward and drops her ultimate hidden move. Lance slam gunning straight for our guy's head. Lewis stays completely glued to the floor. The weapon seemingly crushes him. Faye flashes a triumphant grin, not because she landed the kill shot, but because at the absolute last microsecond, our boy subtly pivots his torso, trapping the deadly polearm right against his bicep. Faye violently yanks her weapon free, whipping it around in a razor-sharp 360-degree arc, forcing Lewis to break his grip, and instantly chains into another brutal lance slam. Yet again, Lewis barely slips past the lethal strike. Way up in the stands, the Proctors are glued to the intense showdown. They mutter about how it's been literally ages since they witnessed the legendary Doulahan family spear, arts in action. They're completely blown away by Faye's insane speed and raw power, straight up labeling her a generational prodigy. Still, those same Proctors admit Louis is putting up a wild fight, sparking a betting pool on exactly how long he'll actually survive. One guy bets he'll crumble any second now. Then they pivot to the principal, desperately demanding his prediction on the final winner. The principal drops the brutal truth. He totally vibes with the new kid, but beating Faye is basically impossible, since real combat is a hardcore clash of flesh and willpower. Our rookie simply lacks the battlefield experience to pull off an upset. Meanwhile, down in the arena, massive dust clouds explode across the battlefield as Faye viciously lunges at our protagonist. He immediately shifts into absolute defense mode. Spotting a microscopic opening, he violently counters, slamming Faye so hard she nearly fumbles her precious weapon. That absolutely triggers her. Taking advantage, Lewis vaults directly over her head, touching down right in her blind spot. She grits her teeth, utterly mind-blown that he actually dodged her entire kit. Not even Kane from the elite Iranka bloodline could survive that barrage. But to Lewis, it's honestly light work. As long as he perfectly tracks her movements, the whole fight feels like slow motion. Taking that as a personal insult, Faye aggressively ups the ante. She explodes forward, unleashing her deadliest hidden art, Lance Crescent Fall. His brain instantly dissects the incoming threat. He quickly calculates that polearm combat relies heavily on piercing wide sweeps and heavy suppression. Combine all that with insanely long reach, and it's a massive headache to deal with. But just as he feels the crushing pressure of her assault, his sharp eyes lock onto a glaring flaw. Spears are practically useless in extreme close quarters. All he literally has to do is perfectly time his approach, aggressively close the gap, and strike. Spotting his golden window, he explodes into a counter-offensive, but Faye smoothly dashes out of the danger zone. Re-engaging instantly, she screams that her family's legendary spearmanship literally has zero blind spots. Whipping her blade into a massive destructive tornado, she engulfs the arena. Up top, the judges are left totally speechless by her god-tier talent. Historically, even the Doulahan family's grandmaster couldn't unlock this insane move until age 16. By flawlessly weaving arcane magic into her martial arts, Faye easily eclipses everyone in her generation. On the surface, it seriously looks like our guy is totally cooked, But here's the crazy plot twist. Louis is secretly holding some wild cards of his own. He actively deploys the intricate sword net style. You see, the second massive downside to a heavy spear build is the absolutely brutal stamina drain. If Louis just maintains perfect pinpoint defense, her gas tank will eventually hit zero, leaving a massive opening. There's just one tiny lethal problem: his blade is quietly fracturing into pieces. Meanwhile, Faye is getting insanely triggered that this nobody refuses to just stay down. Finally, the perfect opening presents itself. Louis violently lunges for the finishing blow, but in that exact critical millisecond, his cheap sword leaving the entire crowd utterly stunned. Pausing the slaughter, Faye actually praises his insane skill, openly admitting that if his gear hadn't failed, that counter would have totally wrecked her. While Louis mentally curses his absolutely trash luck, Faye catches on to the fact that he's been massively holding back this entire time. Louis simply shrugs, apologizing for his toxic little habit. He's practically addicted to downloading his opponent's entire moveset before actually trying. But now that he's fully analyzed her kit, the kid gloves are completely coming off. Faye scoffs, assuming the duel is officially over, since he's literally unarmed. But Louis just drops into a flawless combat stance. Plot twist: he's infinitely deadlier. The tension skyrockets as both fighters prep for round 2. Exploding off the back foot, Faye launches a devastating high-speed drill charge right at his chest. From the sidelines, Kane screams that tanking that hit will literally rip Louis apart. But our boy, he's fully locked into his ultimate flow state. With absolutely zero fear, he violently clamps his bare hands onto the spiraling blade, freezing her ultimate strike in its tracks. The VIP judges practically fall out of their chairs. Faye's signature strike is literally engineered to shred right through armor. Yet the armor-piercing effect completely fizzles out, leaving the elite veterans totally clueless as to how some random kid just tanked a legendary spear strike. Principal Smith is left sitting there completely and utterly speechless. But Faye refuses to take an L. Whipping her leg up for a brutal high kick, she aggressively snatches her weapon back from his grip. Rearming herself, she violently charges back in, this time unleashing a terrifying omnidirectional barrage, meant to slice him into ribbons. However, to Louis's ultra-heightened senses, the whole world just shifts into super deep and absolute focus. He literally parries every single deadly thrust, using nothing but his palms. Faye's brain completely short-circuits, while Principal Smith's jaw literally drops to the floor. He realizes Louis is completely shutting down the spear strikes with a totally unheard-of technique. The Dullahan family's signature spinning spear style is literally legendary in this universe, so tanking it like this proves the kid is built different. Louis finally flips the script, going on the offensive and forcing Faye to backpedal. This seriously ticks her off, and she demands to know what that bizarre move was. Louis keeps it 100% real, explaining it is just a basic part of his martial arts. He literally just adds a micro twist, right at the moment of impact, to completely kill the spear's rotational momentum. That explanation totally flies over Faye's head, leaving her completely lost. Louis just closes the distance, telling her he will just let his fists do the talking. He starts blurring in every direction, while Faye desperately swings, trying to lock onto him. Watching from the sidelines, Kane is mind blown. It looks like a straight-up illusion, because Louis is gliding around like a butterfly. Faye swears Louis is right in her face, but the split second she launches an attack, he has already ghosted to another spot. The dude practically looks like he is flying. Meanwhile, Louis is fully locked in, ready to flex his true style. The move he is spamming right now is the butterfly step, a flawless footwork technique pulled from a boxing legend. It features lightning-fast, weightless steps and a completely unpredictable tempo that perfectly counters Faye. Louis finally spots a massive opening and strikes. He lands a devastating punch, launching her backward through the air. Kane watches in pure shock, entirely unable to believe his eyes. Even Principal Smith is stunned that Louis could dish out that kind of heavy damage to Faye. The judges point out that even without using magic, basically nobody can drop Faye in a pure brawl, meaning this kid might actually be a once-in-a-generation prodigy at hand-to-hand combat. But Faye is absolutely raging right now because she is far from finished. She scrambles up and screams that her bloodline possesses an unbreakable warrior spirit, and she refuses to take an L this easily. She literally chucks her weapon into the dirt, completely confusing Louis, because now they are both stepping into extreme close quarters, hand-to-hand combat. Faye charges at him like a raging bull, and Louis instantly triggers traditional martial arts like Wing Chun and Pak Sao to deflect her bone-crushing punches. Even so, his guard is not flawless, and Faye actually manages to bust up his hand. But instead of raging, the dude just grins and totally shrugs off the pain. Faye snaps at him, swearing that her family is not built on weakness. She immediately unleashes her level 3 crushing fist, But this time, Lewis is ready for it. He seamlessly pivots into a boxing stance, and the two start trading absolutely savage blows. Lewis is insanely hyped right now, and something incredibly dark starts waking up inside him. He does not fight just for the sake of violence, but because he is totally addicted to pushing his limits. His entire vibe turns downright terrifying as he steps right into Faye's personal space, projecting a killer aura that literally makes her freeze in pure terror. She desperately throws up her hands to block, but it is totally useless. Lewis delivers a brutal strike, blasting her straight into a nearby tree. Principal Smith is seriously getting bad vibes from this dark energy. The rest of the students watching are totally speechless, completely unable to accept that a basic commoner has this kind of god-tier power. Out of nowhere, one of the guys starts feeling physically sick and shivering uncontrollably, realizing that this suffocating pressure is literally radiating from Lewis's overwhelming aura. These are the exact same bullies who were plotting against our boy earlier, and they are absolutely mauling right now, because nobody expected a commoner to be this insanely overpowered. The other dude, who was literally just throwing up a second ago, feels his stomach churning as he realizes they have to eliminate Lewis immediately. If the urban legend is actually true, they absolutely cannot let him survive. From a safe distance, they watch Lewis totally tweak out like a complete maniac, sprinting aggressively toward Faye, who is already battered and running on fumes. She barely has a millisecond to throw up a guard before Lewis launches another heavy hook, sending her ragdolling across the dirt yet again. He mercilessly charges her while she is still down. It is painfully obvious that his strength and speed are on a completely different dimension, and there is literally zero chance she clutches a win looking like this. He winds up for the final blow, and at the very last second, genuinely fearing for her life, she activates her martial arcane magic to shield herself and launch a desperate counterattack. The massive shockwave blasts both of them apart. Instantly, the dark vibe drops, and Lewis snaps back to his chill, normal self. He stares down at his totally busted hands, silently realizing just how broken magic actually is. Kane instantly rushes over, panicking and asking if he is okay. Lewis casually replies that he is fine, though he cannot say the same for Faye. Right at that moment, the snobby bullies who were camping behind the trees step up and call Lewis out for losing his emblem loudly, announcing that he is officially disqualified from the trial. Lewis glances down and realizes his emblem has been completely roasted to ashes. Kane instantly jumps into the crossfire to back up his boy, shouting that the whole thing was just a massive accident. The arrogant jerk just flashes a toxic smirk, pointing out that so there is zero chance Kane can help a filthy commoner rig the system today. Closing the distance, he barks at Lewis to drop his gear and commands him to bounce immediately, since he is single-handedly trashing the exam's prestige. He actually has the nerve to call our boy straight-up garbage, who needs to vanish. But a sharp voice suddenly slices through the tension. "Knock it off!" Every single head snaps in her direction. Lewis goes wide-eyed, completely stunned that she is still on her feet after taking that kind of brutal damage. The hater scoffs, asking if a royal like her is seriously shielding a nobody. He warns her she is risking an instant ban for bending the rules. Faye literally could not care less about his trash opinion. She steps up and owns it, declaring that Louis won that point fair and square. She openly admits she slipped up and blasted magic by mistake, offering a genuine apology. Kane's jaw practically hits the floor, the untouchable Queen Faye saying sorry to a commoner, but Louis instantly matches her energy, admitting that his own feral instincts took over earlier, meaning the apology should really be coming from him. She nods, accepting his words, though you can tell her pride is still bruised from taking a loss. She glares and mutters. Even so, she demands a savage run back before they officially step foot in the academy. The rich snob just cackles, flexing the fact that he has already secured 4 tokens, and guarantees Lewis will not even make the cut. But before the guy can finish gloating, Faye violently rips a fabric strip right off her battle gear and shoves it into Lewis' hand. That single torn cloth literally holds the value of the 14 tokens she hunted down. Boom! In a split second, our underdog rockets past the toxic rich kids on the leaderboard. Before dipping out, she throws a playful jab at Kane, then shoots a lethal glare at the haters. Weaklings have no business passing, she states coldly, and absolute beasts should not fail. She flat out refuses to let that kind of corrupted garbage slide on her watch. Twirling her massive spear, she drops a heavy reminder. There are only 10 slots left in this brutal trial. Now she is on a warpath to harvest way more than 14 tags to lock down her golden ticket. Kane flashes a wicked grin. Great minds think alike, he laughs. Without missing a beat, the dynamic duo sprints back into the chaotic battlefield, hungry for more loot, ready to crush the exam and settle their crazy rivalry. Louis just stands there, watching his 2 chaotic new friends fade into the dust, a rare soft smirk tugging at his lips. But he is completely blind to the fact that Headmaster Smith and a proctor are literally floating down from the clouds, locking their sights right on him. The top dog strides over to Lewis. His tone is ice cold as he lays out the harsh truth. Because his official tag was scorched to ashes, he is officially eliminated and getting escorted off the premises immediately. Surprisingly, Lewis just nods, taking the massive loss without a single complaint. Off to the side, the snobby rival bawls, hissing under his breath that this war is far from finished. He snaps his head toward his lackey, growling that he wants that street rat permanently erased from his sight. But his nervous sidekick stammers out a reality check if Faye's squad goes on a rampage and sweeps the remaining competition. Lewis could technically still finesse his way into the roster. The hater, totally blinded by pure toxic rage, ignores logic. A dark, twisted idea sparks in his mind. If a random participant suddenly dropped dead from a tragic accident out in the wild, nobody would bat an eye, especially if that victim was just a dirt-poor nobody. Seriously, the world would just keep spinning. The sidekick silently vibes with this sinister plot, shivering as a cold sweat breaks out just thinking about the absolute nightmare energy he sensed earlier, pouring out of Lewis. He is 100% certain that the monstrous vibe lurking inside that kid is definitely not human. It is like staring into a pitch-black abyss. Cut to sunset. Our defeated main character drops his massive pile of stolen badges into the proctor's hands, deeply frustrated. His bare-knuckle combat skills are top tier, sure, but going toe-to-toe against raw magical nukes, not exactly a fair fight. Staring up at the towering academy gates, he sighs heavily. His entire dream was to hack the system, merging pure physical brawling with arcane spells to become an unstoppable hybrid. But getting in through the front door just became an absolute nightmare. Fast forward to midnight. Lewis is trudging home down a dark street, stressing hard over his shredded, dirt-stained drip. He knows his sweet mom is going to have a literal panic attack when she sees him looking like a zombie. He wrestles with the idea of coming clean about or just faking a lame excuse. He is so zoned out he completely ignores the sketchy guy in a dark hoodie sliding past him in the shadows. But in a split second, while his guard is down, the hooded assassin lunges, thrusting a lethal blade right at his spine. Bam! Lewis goes full Matrix, spinning around and launching a brutal kick that sends the killer flying back. The stunned ninja gasps, demanding to know how. Lewis just wipes the dust off his shoulder. Are you joking? Your foul stench of murder gave you away blocks ago. Out of nowhere, a second masked hitman drops from the shadows, laughing arrogantly at our boy for acting so chill, when he is literally minutes away from meeting the Grim Reaper. Lewis narrows his eyes, instantly analyzing the threat level. These goons are not, meaning he needs to take off the training weights right now. Plus his instincts are screaming at him about a third insanely menacing shadow, lurking far in the distance, just watching. Without warning, assassin number 1 blitzes forward, with a flurry of rapid-fire stabs. Whoosh, whoosh. Louis flawlessly weaves and dips through every single deadly slash, like with a lightning-fast chop. He disarms the killer, snatching the dagger right out of midair, and sweeping the guy's legs out from under him. Hitting the concrete hard, the panicked ninja fires off a desperation counter kick, but Lewis easily swats it away like a pesky fly. The assassin scrambles backward, terrified, regrouping with his squad. Panting heavily, he warns his crew about the kid's god-tier reflex and cracked combat mastery, whispering that the terrifying intel they got was actually 100% accurate. Hearing this, Louis's eyes snap open in dark curiosity. Intel. Who exactly? The assassin smirks, finally dropping the intel. He actually has to hand it to our guy. For a rookie, his hand-to-hand combat is absolutely top tier. But catching hands is one thing, dodging spells is another. On cue, the masked squad locks into formation and unleashes absolute chaos. A deadly combo of crossbow bolts and slicing wind magic catches Lewis completely slipping. He barely dodges death as glowing projectiles shred the tree trunks right behind his head. Wait a minute, those razor-sharp gusts. They are the exact same wind arrows that tore through the battleground during his fight with those toxic bullies. Knowing playtime is officially over, our boy takes a deep, grounding breath. He taps straight into his core, channeling raw, untamed ki through his veins, to violently supercharge his muscles and forcefully snap his hidden potential wide awake. Boom, he explodes forward with terrifying speed, launching himself right into the He weaves through the deadly volley, so insanely fast he literally becomes a blur. The ninjas cannot even track his shadow. Lewis is an absolute menace out there. He ducks rolls and delivers bone-crushing kicks, effortlessly tearing through their front line like a beast, until a massive shadow suddenly blocks his strike. A brutal shockwave of pure agony shoots straight up Lewis's arm. Reality check. The heavyweight presence he sensed earlier. This guy is not just strong, He is an absolute monster, radiating pure dread. Glancing around, the bitter truth hits him. He is boxed in by a mob of ruthless killers. A fence is out the window. Right now, surviving is the only play. He fights like a demon, but you cannot dodge the rain forever. A brutal volley of glowing arrows finally connects, slamming Lewis face first into the dirt. The hit squad collectively exhales. Thank God he is down, because just trying to pin this kid has them panting like exhausted dogs. Still, they are totally rattled. For a random street-level nobody, this kid was a million times harder to put down than a fully trained magic rookie. One arrogant grunt strolls up to inspect the body, completely clueless that Lewis is just playing possum, waiting for the perfect moment. Snap! Lewis's eyes fly open, and he chooses absolute violence. He viciously jams his fingers straight into the guy's throat, launching the breathless ninja backward. The head assassin is honestly baffled. Did this kid really just pull off the oldest trick in the book to secure a savage counterattack? But secretly he respects the cold-blooded hustle from someone so young. Bleeding and battered, Lewis snatches a dropped crossbow and aims it dead at the boss, spitting out a venomous question. How can you just stand there while your own guys get slaughtered? The leader does not even flinch, replying with zero emotion that trash belongs in the without breaking a single sweat. Raising his hand, the boss channels dark energy, summoning a terrifyingly massive glowing hammer out of thin air, muttering that if his shady client did not want the boy dead, he would have totally recruited Lewis on the spot. And with that sick compliment, he wildly swings the gigantic weapon straight at Lewis's skull. Our boy throws up a desperate guard at the literal last millisecond. The impact is deafening. The sheer kinetic force shatters his defense, launching Lewis through the air like a broken rag doll. But before gravity can even pull him down, the boss teleports right above him. Wham! He brings the arcane hammer crashing down on Lewis's chest, rocketing him brutally into the solid earth. Mid-beatdown, the killer shouts that Lewis's raw stats are way beyond any basic magic student. But a rookie is still a rookie, he mocks. Against a high-tier predator like him, Lewis is just completely out of his league. Assuming the kid is flatlined, the assassin casually strolls up to the crater. But halfway there, a chilling shiver crawls up his spine. Something is incredibly off. The thick dust clears, revealing absolute madness. Lewis is already back on his feet, locked in a fighting stance. The boss is genuinely shook. How is this boy still breathing? It is nothing but raw, unfiltered willpower, keeping our boy conscious. He absolutely refuses to fold, but the assassin's patience has officially run dry. It is time for the kill shot. He conjures a monstrous, coffin-shaped boulder, a lethal martial technique called the Celestial Hammer, and chucks the apocalyptic rock right at Lewis's face. Staring death in the eyes, panic grips Lewis's heart. Flashbacks of his family, his hard-fought life, and his burning dream to conquer the magical world flood his mind. He swore to protect his squad. He swore to rewrite his trash destiny, whatever it takes. As that desperate ambition hits its boiling point, a switch violently flips deep within his soul. His energy warps into something dark and terrifying. That same psycho-unhinged aura from before violently erupts from his body. Throwing defense out the window, Lewis goes full savage. Screaming out his survival, he throws a gargantuan ki-infused punch that violently clashes against the stony coffin, leaving the assassin completely paralyzed by the sheer mind-bending pressure. A blinding shockwave detonates across the forest, and when the heavy smoke finally lifts, Lewis is on his knees, hacking up his lungs. But the boss is still standing, though he is seriously creeped out by the whole exchange. It actually feels like he just traded blows with an absolute equal. With Lewis finally tapping into his monstrous god-tier potential, the puzzle pieces click into place. The killer finally gets why that shadowy client paid top dollar to erase this kid from existence. Regardless, a job is a job. He slowly closes the distance, raising his glowing hammer high into the sky. But right before the hammer drops, a roaring tornado of blue lightning violently crashes down from the heavens. The blast completely ruins the ninja's swing, knocking him completely trapped inside a blinding vortex of high-voltage electricity. The boss panics. Before he can even process the trap, the lightning mercilessly fries him, leaving his body totally scorched and wrecked. Sprawled out in the dirt, Lewis watches the crazy light show in pure disbelief. Through the crackling sparks, Principal Smith literally floats down from the sky. Our boy is on guard. Principal Smith, however, flashes a hugely relieved smile. He is just hyped to see his favorite problem child, still breathing. Totally proud that Lewis managed to keep his inner monster. The principal tosses Lewis a glowing elixir to restore his stamina. The kid downs it like an absolute boss. The violent cyclone finally spits out the mangled ninja, sending him crashing face first into the dirt. Principal Smith storms over, absolutely fuming. He demands to know who had the sheer nerve to ambush one of his applicants right on academy turf. Shockingly, the broken assassin actually pays his respects to the headmaster, gasping out that not even a legendary grandmaster could leash a total beast like Lewis. He warns that this ambush is literally just a tiny taste of the insane destiny hunting the boy down. Out of nowhere, the ninja straight up detonates right in Smith's face. Both Lewis and the principal are left completely stunned by the blast. Smith pieces it together, a forced self-destruct means. The shadowy assassin guild definitely slapped a massive bounty on Lewis's head. Still, he prays he is just being paranoid. Meanwhile, Lewis springs to his feet, absolutely blown away. That top-tier potion worked pure magic. He flexes his muscles, completely hyped that every single shattered bone is flawlessly knitted back together. Curious, he turns to the principal and asks why the old man always swoops in to save his skin. Smith just smirks, promising to spill all the details once they get back to Louis's house. Bam! Reality hits Lewis like a freight train, and sheer panic washes over his face. He is insanely past his curfew, and his mom is probably losing her mind. He bolts toward home way faster than he ever threw hands with those villains. Left behind, Smith summons a glowing serpentine spirit named Skyly. He commands it to scrub the crime scene spotless, then casually trails after the panicked teen. Cut to Mantia, a gritty town up in the northern Kandria Empire. Outside the local orphanage, two grimy thugs are ruthlessly cornering Lakiela. They aggressively interrogate her, accusing her of skimming tax cash. They try to shake her down, completely disrespecting her right to her face, while she fiercely stands her ground, swearing that every single dime goes straight to protecting the orphan. But these goons do not care. Their vibe is purely toxic, and they are clearly out for blood. Just as a thug lunges to grab her, bam! A brutal kick shatters his jaw, sending blood and teeth scattering across the pavement. Enter Lewis. He made it just in time to rescue his mom, and Lakiela's eyes light up with massive relief. But that joy instantly turns into pure horror when she spots his shredded clothes. Before Louis can even check if she is all right, she sprints over, bombarding him with questions. Why is his outfit completely destroyed? Whose blood is that? And what is up with the bandages on his face? Blushing hard, Louis tries to play it cool. He fumbles out a lame excuse about scraping a tree during the exam, but she is definitely not buying that lie. Suddenly, the toothless gangster scrambles back up. He glares at Lewis, screams, and threatens to call in the whole squad to jump him. But before things escalate, Principal Smith smoothly steps onto the scene, totally diffusing the tension. He formally drops his name, and the moment the thugs recognize him, their souls practically leave their bodies. They realize they are staring down a literal grandmaster. Smith flashes a chilling smile, politely telling the goons to send his warmest regards to the local lord. The gangsters catch that lethal hint immediately, and sprint away like their lives depend on it. Smith then turns his attention back to Lakiela, gently stating he needs a serious chat about her son's future. She quickly ushers the two of them indoors. The moment they step inside, the principal's eyes lock onto a bizarre millstone. Mind-blowingly, the machine is grinding completely on its own, with zero mana involved. Looking closer, he is stunned to find crazy automated gadgets hooked up everywhere, from the floorboards to the rafters. Lakiela beams with pride, admitting she has absolutely no clue how Lewis engineered this tech. But honestly, she is just thrilled because her boy's genius inventions made their daily grind. She then connects the dots. If the prestigious headmaster pulled up to their humble home, Lewis must have flexed incredibly hard at the exams. Smith lets out a rich laugh. Doing something notable is the understatement of the century. Lewis literally shattered every expectation. He is totally mesmerized by the kid's raw talent, admitting he has only read about this level of power in the ancient Gaia scriptures. Back in the Dark Ages, when monstrous beasts treated humans like literal livestock, a single goddess-chosen prodigy rose from the ashes. This legend hacked the core of elemental magic, inventing the ultimate arcane martial arts. Fast forward 5 years, he and his elite squad absolutely decimated the monster horde, single-handedly dragging humanity back from the brink of total extinction. That epic victory birthed their entire modern calendar, kicking off the legendary holiday known as Liberation Day. It was the ultimate flex of human survival against the ancient texts dubbed this absolute unit the first hero. Lakiela is completely captivated by the epic lore, starry-eyed over the mythical savior. Meanwhile, Lewis is just scratching his head. Why did none of the local bedtime stories ever mention this guy? Smith drops the final piece of the puzzle. He explains that the hero's identity gets twisted depending on which scripture you read, but his true form. A man rocking pitch-black hair and bottomless dark eyes. Hearing that exact description, Lakiela completely freezes up. She shields Lewis like a fierce mama bear, leaving him totally stunned by her reaction. Principal Smith then drops a massive bombshell, revealing a top-secret truth, hidden from everyone except the absolute elite. You see, the legendary savior of humanity didn't just win the war. He fell victim to a twisted, all-consuming madness, festering deep inside his soul. He completely snapped, slaughtering innocent people, and committing the ultimate betrayal by butchering his own loyal squad in cold blood. And as he spiraled into total insanity, the higher-ups wiped his name from the history books forever. His terrifying descent into darkness became the ultimate warning. Hearing this dark lore, Lewis stares blankly at his trembling palms, flashing back to every terrifying moment. He almost let his own dark urges take control. Principal Smith slowly stands up, letting the heavy tension fill the room, and drops another chilling fact across every single nation. Anyone born with raven black hair and pitch black eyes gets instantly executed, just to stop another monster from being born. He locks his piercing gaze on Lewis, deadpanning, asking if the kid seriously thought a cheap box dye job would fool the world's most powerful elites. Lachiella, Lewis's adoptive mom, bravely steps right into the line of fire, realizing her desperate choice is fully exposed. She confesses she practically forced him to bleach his hair, not out of malice, but because she was absolutely terrified he'd be hunted down like an animal. She fiercely vouches for his pure heart, swearing he's a good kid. Lewis gently tells her to chill, logically pointing out that if the headmaster actually wanted to slice his throat, he'd be a goner by now. The old man is clearly playing a different game. At that, Principal Smith cracks a sly smile, genuinely hyped that a 13-year-old hasn't just fought off his chaotic inner demons, but actually put them on a leash, sensing the raw, unyielding aura of a brand new legend. Caught off guard, Lewis pauses, letting the heavy weight of the word hero sink into his brain. The principal shatters the illusion, explaining that this so-called era of peace is a total sham, with a catastrophic darkness always creeping just beneath the surface. Watching him completely dominate the exam hall, Smith realized those wild myths were actually real, deciding right then to take Lewis under his wing, to literally save mankind. Out of nowhere, he lobs an apple straight at Louis's face, but the kid snatches it mid-air with zero sweat. Smith casually adds that because Faye and Kane completely wrecked the competition, 99% of the applicants flunked the finals, leaving Lewis as the absolute victor. With a formal nod, he welcomes the boy into the elite academy, offering to personally train him into an unstoppable force. Mind completely blown that a living legend is betting it all on him, Lewis hesitates, asking the million-dollar question. What if he goes totally psycho, like the first hero? Before the words even leave his mouth, the principal blitzes forward, snatching the apple back, and drops a cold-blooded threat if he ever crosses that line. Smith will personally execute him on the spot. Fast forward to the next morning, Lewis is hammering away at a wooden fence alongside his foster brother, who is practically losing his mind over the fact that Lewis scored a VIP golden ticket straight from the headmaster himself. The guy keeps hyping it up as the ultimate flex, but Louis knows the dark reality. That midnight chat was basically a giant red flag, though he keeps his mouth shut to spare his brother a massive panic attack. Meanwhile, the bro is just yapping away about crazy tuition fees, drip-worthy uniforms, dorm rent, and every single chaotic detail of academy life. But Lewis zones out, his brain spiraling over the original fallen hero, wondering what twisted connection he actually shares with that ancient monster, especially since he's supposed to be just some random low-tier noble. He flashes back to how effortlessly Smith read him like an open book, instantly busting his fake hair color, and the bone-chilling death threat. Lewis genuinely questions if he can trust a single word coming out of the old man's mouth. Flashing back to last night while strolling under the moonlight, next to the towering Grandmaster, Lewis confronted him, demanding to know why he dragged his fragile mom into this dark mess. Knowing it would wreck her nerves, the principal bluntly stated she had to swallow the harsh reality, or else she'd end up as dead weight dragging him down. Lewis immediately fires up at the word burden, but Smith cuts him off with a lethal warning the second his dark secret leaks. His entire family is getting marked for death. As his mom, she has to toughen up and let her kid dive headfirst into the brutal trials that are literally just kicking off. Dropping that mic, the principal blasts off into the night sky. Left alone in the silence, Lewis realizes the harsh truth. The old man is absolute. He needs to level up, or everyone he loves is doomed. Suddenly, a swarm of giggling orphanage kids rushes him, completely breaking the tension. Little Lana tackles him with a massive, tearful hug, sobbing and begging to know if he'll ever come back. Squatting down, Lewis drops a soft smile, swearing he won't ghost, promising to pull up constantly, and even host sleepovers whenever the academy gives him some downtime. Because no matter what, this place is his true sanctuary. They lock it in with a pinky swear, a wholesome vow Lewis permanently etches into his soul. Out of nowhere, a sharp voice cuts through the crowd. A super stiff, high-class butler rolls up, announcing he reps the insanely wealthy Aranka clan, and that the young VIP Kane is personally summoning Lewis to their mega mansion. He hands over a crazy, fancy letter, complete with a legit wax seal, basically proving Kane wants to lock in their bro status before the semester drops. Totally hyped, Louis accepts the royal invite and hops inside the ultra-luxe carriage stationed in the heart of Candria, within the Heartsen Empire. Pulling up to the destination, Louis steps out as the butler respectfully bows low. He's officially standing at the doorstep of the Arancas, one of the most ridiculously overpowered aristocratic families out there. Just walking through the city streets, the sheer wealth and sky-high reputation of this family are impossible to miss. But Louis gets completely blindsided by the colossal estate towering right in front of him. His jaw literally hits the floor, finally fully grasping that Kane is actual elite royalty. Just as he steps up to the grand entrance, a familiar voice shouts out. It is Kane, sprinting toward him with totally hyped-up energy. The dude practically tackles Louis into a massive hug. Louis gives him massive props for putting on an absolute show during that crazy final exam and throws him a solid thank you, admitting he only cleared the trials because Faye and Kane completely saved his skin. He casually mentions wiping the slate clean on their little wager, since they are totally even now. But Kane immediately shoots that down. That is a whole different vibe, and the bet stays locked in. Plus, he knows Louis always had the raw talent to pass anyway. And the craziest flex, he actually earned Faye's massive respect, which is incredibly rare. As the two guys stroll into the mega mansion, a whole squad of maids deeply bows in perfect sync. Kane brings up how they couldn't actually throw hands and go all out during the exam, so he desperately wants to clash in a one-on-one spar before the semester kicks off, just to truly test each other's limits. He also promises to drop some exclusive insider knowledge on academy life and advanced magic tricks. Louis is totally vibing with the idea until a freezing voice shatters the mood. Glaring down from the grand staircase is Kane's mother, radiating absolute disgust at the sight of her son's new guest. Kane instantly steps up, fiercely defending Louis as his actual friend. But before a single excuse leaves his lips, her terrifying death glare shuts him down completely, leaving Kane frozen stiff. She violently clicks her heels down the marble steps, spitting straight venom right at Louis. She snaps that she literally hammered into Kane's head to exclusively pick top-tier friends. And the majestic doors of the Aranca bloodline aren't open for just any random stray. A totally basic nobody like Louis doesn't even deserve to breathe the same air as her son. It is a complete slap in the face to their legacy. She viciously reminds Kane that his only grind should be leveling up and dominating, instead of wasting time dragging around dirt-poor peasants. Kane is literally dying inside as Louis tanks this brutal trash talk right to his face. Before the boy can even blink, the elite matriarch aggressively closes the distance, demanding to know his scam for latching onto her kid. She openly treats him like a gold digger craving cash or clout, before sharply sliding a massive glowing gem ring off her finger. She brags that this single piece is worth thousands of pure gold coins, enough to fund his pathetic life forever. With ultimate disrespect, she tosses it straight into the dirt at his sneakers and orders him to grab his little handout and get lost. Watching this absolutely humiliating scene, Kane snaps out of his shock and begs his mom to drop the toxic attitude. He frantically apologizes to his buddy, but his heart completely sinks when he spots Louis slowly crouching down and wrapping his fingers around the flashy jewelry. Looking dead into her eyes, Louis coolly states that he only teamed up with Kane because he heavily respected the guy's raw talent. And if his own mother prices her, she should be completely embarrassed for downgrading her own flesh and blood. Kane is absolutely stunned watching Louis casually flip the script and roast the scariest, and oh boy, she is totally losing her mind with pure, unfiltered. Screaming at the top of her lungs, she orders the guards to literally toss this kid out of the estate. The security squad swarms in, but Kane instantly throws his body on the line to block them. He desperately screams that Louis is miles ahead of him in talent, aggressively reminding his mom that this so-called nobody shattered historical exam records and even crushed Faye in combat. But the furious matriarch isn't buying a single word of it. In her twisted worldview, a street kid casually dunking on elite prodigies isn't just some rare myth, it's straight-up impossible delusion. She brutally laughs in Kane's face, asking if he genuinely thought such a pathetic lie would actually work. Kane desperately doubles down, swearing on his life it is the absolute truth. And Louis casually drops the mic, claiming that hanging out with him is the ultimate cheat code to make Kane ridiculously overpowered. This completely pushes the lady over the edge, infuriated that some random peasant has the absolute nerve to talk back to her face. Her furious screech violently echoes through the massive grand hall, but then the heavy oak doors slowly swing wide open, and an insanely intimidating silhouette steps into the mansion. Without missing a beat, the deep voice locks right on to Louis, dangerously questioning if he truly believes his presence alone will level up his son. Every single head snaps toward the entrance. The arrogant mother's blood instantly runs cold the second she spots her husband, the absolute supreme boss of the Aranca Empire, just standing there. She totally panics, awkwardly stammering out the name William, and frantically rushes over, begging him to just ignore this mess and walk away, swearing that trash like Lewis could never touch their level. But William literally ghosts her, completely gliding right past, to face his son, who immediately drops into a deep, respectful bow. Lewis smoothly follows up with a polite greeting, instantly recognizing that Grandmaster William is radiating a suffocating god-tier energy, easily matching the terrifying pressure of Principal Smith. The monstrous patriarch completely brushes off the kid's hello. His piercing gaze locks onto Kane, demanding to know if this crazy claim holds any actual weight. Kane does not even flinch, firmly confirming that Lewis is leagues above him in combat. A dark smirk crosses William's face as he orders the boy to prove it, instantly erupting with an absolutely monstrous aura, dripping with pure, suffocating bloodlust. The gravity in the room gets so insanely heavy that Lewis's lungs literally freeze, feeling like a massive starving lion is staring directly into his screaming soul. The pressure relentlessly shreds at his skin, convincing the kid that William is actually trying to erase him from existence. But right at the absolute brink of collapsing, a crazy miracle kicks in. Even with every single bone in his body feeling like it is being violently crushed, Lewis somehow manages to flare up his own fierce energy, aggressively pushing back against the patriarch's mind-bending willpower. This crazy explosion of hidden strength totally shocks the entire room. Honestly, Lewis never saw this insane tsunami of pressure coming from a literal living legend. But hey, grinding for years in the deadly monster zones definitely pays off. He has stacked up way too much mental armor to just break down from pure killing intent. And man, this crazy showdown is barely even getting started. Oh, you know things are just heating up. Without skipping a beat, Louis channels his raw aura, detonating it outward with a shockwave so intense that even a powerhouse like William flinches. To the patriarch, this kid morphs from a mere boy into a bloodthirsty dragon, towering right over his own majestic lion. The spectral beasts lock eyes, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife, before violently colliding in a blinding explosion of energy. Kane's jaw straight up drops watching his buddy flex this hard. Against all odds, Lewis actually tanks the crushing pressure, but his tank eventually hits empty, forcing him to drop to one knee, completely drained. Kane instantly sprints over, frantically checking if his bro is still breathing, only for Lewis to brush it off with a breathless chuckle. This gritty display finally flips a switch in William's brain. Staring down at the boy, he demands to know the driving force behind this insane hunger for power. Looking the man dead in the eye, Lewis simply states he would do absolutely anything to keep his family safe. Without dropping a single syllable, William turns on his heel, but as his cape sweeps the dirt, he coldly roasts his own flesh and blood, telling Kane his mindset is seriously lacking, and he better start taking notes from his new friend. Hearing this absolute violation, Kane's mom is utterly shook. She scrambles after her husband, desperately begging him to dial back the harsh judgment. But the patriarch straight up ghosts her, freezing her out entirely. Watching his mom tremble like a leaf under his father's shadow, a brief flicker of pity twists in Kane's chest. But he quickly shoves that heavy vibe deep down. Pivoting back to Lewis, he flashes a grin and suggests they hit the practice field to kick. Once they touch down at the arena, Kane awkwardly clears his throat, totally mortified, as he apologizes for his family's super toxic drama. But Lewis waves it off like it is literally nothing. He admits the old man goes way too hard, pointing out that power-wise, the two teens are basically on the same level anyway, so he shouldn't sweat it. But Kane just sighs, dropping the painful truth that this suffocating pressure is just the daily reality of being the heir to an absolute legend. His dad only worships raw talent, meaning the only way to ever earn a nod of respect from that guy is to level up beyond belief. And honestly, with the way things are going, Kane admits Lewis gives off way more main character Aranca energy than he ever could. Trying to play peacemaker, Lewis argues that the intense trial was probably just William's twisted way of testing the wall, a messed up version of tough love. But Kane is definitely not buying that narrative. Tilting his head up to stare at the endless blue, he spirals into how alien the concept of love has always been in his household. Flashing back through his brutal childhood, it hits him that he has basically been locked inside these estate walls since day one, trapped in an endless loop of grinding, eating, and crashing. His combat drills kicked off by throwing down with feral beasts, back when he was literally bite-sized compared to them. The old man was obsessed with molding him into a legendary sage, just like his granddad, without a single clue why he just blindly swung his blade until his hands bled, all for a desperate crumb of validation. But at the end of the day, this massive mansion was nothing but a gilded cage. He would catch glimpses of normal kids, laughing and tossing paper planes, while he was forced to shed blood in death matches he could not even wrap his head around. Some days the paranoia was so bad, it felt like he needed a guard's green light just to inhale, Sure, the elites hyped him up as the golden prodigy, but those fancy titles were just icy iron chains, choking the life out of him. And the tighter the grip got, the harder he wanted to rebel. Deep down, he craved nothing more than to spread his wings and soar across the horizon with zero limits. But that fantasy is basically a massive pipe dream. Reality check. He is currently way too weak to even look his dad in the eye, let alone openly defy him. So for the time being, he has to play the good soldier, swallow his pride, and keep carving his path to absolute power with every strike of his blade, because leveling up is the only master key to shattering those chains forever. Plus, his old man happens to be an alumnus of the exact same elite academy he is about to enroll in. Kane's master plan: crush the academy and permanently snatch back the steering wheel of his own destiny, spitting out those heavy truths. He draws his steel and levels the tip right at Lewis's chest. With a fiery glare, he declares he is betting everything on his buddy to push him to the absolute peak, and Lewis does not even blink before locking in. Meanwhile, watching the boys clash swords from a hidden balcony, William coldly prompts his right-hand man for the intel drop he requested earlier. The loyal butler drops the bombshell intel, confirming Lewis is anything but average. His reports reveal that during the entrance trials, the kid whipped out unhinged combat arts that completely baffled the pros. He didn't just smash historical records to dust, he was actually the one who wiped the floor with Faye, relying purely on physical stats while she was throwing full-blown magic around. What's crazier, he is the headmaster's absolute favorite, since the old guy, literally, threw hands with the Assassin Guild just last night to keep the boy breathing. Digesting this insane rap sheet, William smirks, fully aware that this kid is built different and is an absolute magnet for chaos. Raising an eyebrow, the butler dares to ask if the patriarch already saw this coming, questioning why he would ever let a walking hazard hang out with the young master. But William is playing a totally different game. He knows perfectly well that dangerous magnets attract deadly threats, and getting pushed to the absolute brink is the fastest cheat code to forging true strength. Staring intensely at the sparring match, he tells his butler that surviving the insane crossfire around Lewis is exactly the brutal push Kane needs to finally awaken his true potential. Lewis is absolutely wiping the floor with Kane in a bare-knuckle brawl, right up until Kane finally snaps and pulls his blade. He dares Lewis to stop holding back and bring the heat. Chilling on the sidelines, William silently gives his kid props. He's starting to realize Kane's got a way better radar for spotting real talent than he ever gave him credit for. Without warning, Kane blasts toward Louis, triggering his signature wind lunge strike. But in a total split second, Lewis doesn't just block the hit. He whips a fist so insanely close to Kane's face that the dude doesn't even clock the counterattack. It isn't until Louis's fingertips literally graze his cheek that reality sets in. Catching his breath, Kane admits that juicing up speed with magic is a solid flex. Kane is totally mind-blown. Even totally maxed out on magic, he still got shut down like it was nothing. Suddenly, it all clicks. This is exactly how Lewis completely wrecked Faith. But while Kane is connecting the dots, Lewis totally zones out. Kane asks what's up, and Lewis hits him with a heavy question. Has he ever felt like something was fundamentally off about his own combat style? Kane draws a blank. After all, his moves are strictly classified secret arts, hardwired into the Aranka bloodline. His dad and grandpa both mastered this exact style to become absolute units. But Louis waves that off. That's not the point. He drops a bombshell. There might be a totally different path for Kane. One that ditches the family shadow entirely. Kane is completely floored by the audacity. Lewis casually drops his sword, snags a dagger from the weapon rack, spins back around and smirks. Want to catch your old man off guard? Over on the sidelines, William's eagle eyes lock onto them, just as the two boys launch themselves into the air. Zero warning. They hurtle straight toward the patriarch like human missiles. Flashback to just a few minutes prior. Lewis is giving Kane a quick masterclass, breaking down how speed isn't just an asset, it's the ultimate weapon, the undisputed king of combat. And he's not just talking about, it's about razor-sharp reflexes and split-second processing. Flashing back to how Kane performed during the second entrance exam, Lewis explains that his crazy natural agility is a match made in heaven with his support magic. But heavy thrusting strikes, those are notoriously brutal to perfect. And just because his grandpa was a god at them, doesn't mean Kane has to copy-paste that exact same legacy. To prove his point, Louis tosses him a pair of twin daggers. He drops the harsh truth. The only reason William hit a total brick wall and never reached Grandmaster status was because he bottlenecked his own potential by blindly cloning a rigid style. Kane doesn't have to fall into that trap. To truly unlock his raw talent, he needs to flip his entire playbook. Lewis asks if he's ready to rebel. A massive grin spreads across Kane's face. He loves it, calling Lewis a total freak compared to the stuck-up nobles. Kane swears he'll do whatever it takes to break his chains, even if it means mastering an entirely foreign arsenal. The two bros burst out laughing, splitting a quick smoke as they cook up a chaotic scheme to jump William, just to prove Kane's raw grit and evolution. And that right there is the exact origin story of how they ended up dive-bombing the family head. Kane channels a massive burst of wind magic, and the duo blitzes William at warp speed. The butler is sweating bullets, panicking over why his master isn't dodging, but William coldly orders him to stand down. Miss before impact. William casually swats away the strike like it's nothing. He gives Lewis the exact same effortless treatment. Unfazed, Louis unleashes a relentless barrage. He knows daggers are the absolute ultimate speed demon weapons, and he's ready to milk that insane agility for all it's worth. Stacking his raw skill with the elusive butterfly step, he tries to completely overload the older man's sensory radar and dump max damage in a fraction of a second. William's eyes actually widen a fraction when he clocks the legendary footwork, but he still effortlessly weaves through the kill zone. Meanwhile, Kane harnesses the wind to vault back into the sky, launching a devastating pincer attack from the blind side. Ditching the heavy sword, Kane feels weightless, practically floating on the air currents. He isn't just digging the new blades, he is absolutely addicted to the insane synergy of dual-wielding martial arts and wind magic. It gives him a surge of pure adrenaline. Mid-air, he realizes he has finally discovered his true calling. But William decides playtime is officially over. He detonates a massive shockwave of aura, blasting both boys backward like ragdolls. The patriarch is absolutely furious. Kane actually dared to trash the sacred Aranka fighting style, just to prove an edgy point, and he ruthlessly calls his son a naive fool. But Kane and Lewis stick the landing, immediately locking back into attack formation. They rev up the wind boosters, matching Lewis's hyperspeed. But with a lazy flick of the wrist, William parries the fatal strike, shoving Kane away and brutally labeling his own flesh and blood a coward. But as his dad charges in, Kane flashes back to Lewis's golden rule. Stepping back doesn't make you weak. But hey, if a tactical retreat keeps you alive, you take it. Kane falls back for a split second, recalibrating before his next strike. Planting his boots firmly into the dirt, he rockets back toward his old man. Right as William's massive hand reaches out to snatch him, Kane launches himself into a sick front flip, whipping up a fierce burst of wind magic, spinning like a miniature cyclone to slash from the blind spot. Right on cue, Louis dives back into the fray. As the duo gears up for a brutal combo, time slows down. Kane flashes back to a quick huddle they had just minutes ago, where Lewis had totally put him onto this bizarre but ridiculously overpowered move from baseball, a pitch called the changeup, where you completely bait your enemy by constantly mixing up your tempo and tossing in unpredictable variations. When executed perfectly, even the most basic jabs turn absolutely lethal. All it takes is a single millisecond of hesitation from the opponent, and you can completely blitz them, weaponizing sheer velocity to make those daggers hit like trucks. That exact mind game is what the boys are pulling right now. But William is a seasoned beast. He effortlessly parries Kane's incoming slash, brushing it off as a flimsy, low-tier strike. But at the absolute last microsecond, Kane hits the gas, faking him out completely. His glowing blade stops literally an inch from William's throat. William freezes, utterly stunned that his own kid just pulled a fast one on him. Meanwhile, Lewis is beaming with pride for his bro, ready to follow up with his own blitz. Suddenly, William snaps out of it and declares playtime is officially over. He shoots a stern glare at a heavily panting Kane and turns on his heel. As he walks off, he throws a cold warning over his shoulder, telling the boy never to drag the Aranka family name through the mud. Kane just smirks, taking that as an absolute win. After all, the old man did not straight up forbid him. His loyal butler shadows him on the way out. As they walk, William's mind is racing, replaying how those kids chained together relentless close-quarters dagger strikes, paired with lightning-fast hit-and-run tactics. For a top-tier grandmaster like him, seeing the insane potential of a totally new combat meta is beyond fascinating. Getting schooled by a couple of kids is definitely a wild feeling. Secretly beneath that icy exterior, his chest is swelling with immense pride for his son. Back in the yard, Lewis is absolutely buzzing over the chance to cross blades with a living legend. Honestly, he is just bummed the sparring match had to end so soon. Kane, though, he is practically on cloud nine. For the very first time in his life, he finally earned his father's elusive respect. Riding the greatest high imaginable, he decides it is payback time. He drags Lewis straight to the legendary Aranka family library to hook him up with a reward. Lewis drops his jaw at the endless walls of ancient tomes. When he finally snaps back to reality and turns around, Kane is already shoving an ornate box into his hands, telling him straight up without Lewis having his back. He never would have leveled up and found his true calling this fast. Popping the lid. Lewis is blinded by a stash of glittering gold and priceless artifacts, but the real treasure, a stack of ultra-rare magic grimoires that everyday commoners could own, absolute game-changers for his future training. Lewis pulls out a heavy, leather-bound book, squinting at the title. It turns out these are the official, heavily guarded Academy curriculum manuals, neatly sorted by academic year. Inside, they are packed to the brim with foundational spellcraft, elemental affinities, and hardcore breakdowns for both magical and physical combat. Kane casually drops the bomb that every single freshman is forced to endure the magic awakening ceremony. Lewis just blinks, completely clueless about what that actually means. Breaking it down, Kane explains it is this massive spiritual trial, where candidates connect with raw, elemental forces by touching the holy statue of the goddess Gaia. He mentions doing his own awakening at the Grand Temple, flexing that even elite nobles had to cough up a steep fee of 10 gold coins just for the privilege. Lewis is completely shook by such an insane 10 gold coins. That massive pile of cash could keep his old orphanage running for literally years. He instantly panics, asking if the academy is going to charge him for the awakening. But Kane waves it off, explaining the ritual on campus is completely free. That huge perk is exactly why kids kill to get into this school. Still, surviving here isn't cheap when you factor in dorms, food, and daily survival. Textbooks and gear rentals will bleed your wallet dry. That is exactly why Kane shoves the shiny gift box toward Lewis, demanding he take it without a second thought. He tells his buddy to lean on him whenever he is broke. Before Lewis can even try to reject the handout, Kane aggressively jams the box straight into his chest. He claims this just settles their old bet, plain and simple. Lewis totally reads between the lines, seeing his bro's unspoken kindness. Reluctantly, he accepts the cash. But a huge wake-up call hits Lewis right then and there. He seriously needs to start grinding for his own bag. Rumor has it that magic pharmacists rake in absolute bank, making him wonder if the library has any guides on it. Then boom, a wild idea strikes him. What if he just hacks this world? If he crafts brand new items using his past life memories, he could easily get filthy rich. He turns to Kane, asking if the mighty Aranka clan has any ties to the Merchant Guild. Kane nods, raising an eyebrow at the super random question. Lewis just smirks, calling it a top-secret project that Kane will witness soon enough. Flash forward 1 week to the Academy's massive campus. The grand entrance ceremony kicks off with terrified freshmen practically tiptoeing around. Lewis strides in absolutely hyped that his big moment is here. As he breezes past the crowd, a gorgeous upperclassman suddenly catches a whiff of his aura. He is rocking the absolute most hyped, trending cologne on the market. Flexing that kind of expensive scent, she bets his family holds some major noble rank, like a count at least. Smelling an opportunity to network, she instantly swoops in. She introduces herself as Rose, from the 150th class, flashing a dazzling smile. She smoothly offers to be his personal campus tour guide. Loving the VIP treatment, Lewis happily introduces himself. Rose mentally blanks. Grill. She has never heard that family name, but its edgy, dangerous ring definitely hooks her curiosity. Her mind races, pegging him as some powerful noble's secret, illegitimate heir. Strolling side by side, Louis dives into campus lore, explaining how for years, ever since the Emperor's Garden took over, the royal heirs have been at war with the elite noble houses here. Looking around, the academy seems like a peaceful paradise, but in the shadows, it is a brutal, cutthroat war zone for academic resources. Basic students can level up by passing exams and hoarding credit points, but if you fail, or worse, get targeted by the elites, you are instantly kicked out. Rose playfully pokes Lewis's chest, warning him that all eyes are totally on him now, so he better bring his A game. She leans in uncomfortably close, fishing for details about his family's backing. Lewis freezes low-key, sweating because she is invading his personal space. Suddenly, a random guy aggressively swats her hand away. He introduces himself as Brian, loudly hyping Lewis up as the legendary commoner, who totally shattered the freshman entrance exam records. Lewis gives a polite nod. Rose's jaw drops. A commoner. She just completely wasted her time, totally tricked by that ridiculously expensive cologne he was wearing. Lewis brushes off her disgusted look without a second thought and faces Brian. The guy tells him to ignore the gold digger, explaining that this school is basically the Empire in miniature, packed with toxic snakes and fake friends. Kane suddenly shouts Lewis's name, prompting Brian to wander off toward the crowd, tossing a casual peace sign and telling Lewis to hit him up if he... Lewis watches him go, super confused why Brian bounced the second Kane showed up. Kane scoffs, revealing Brian is the Chancellor's son, and definitely not part of his crew. Faye suddenly crashes the chat, roasting Brian as a decent dude with zero actual backbone. The second Kane spots Faye, his defenses instantly spike. They start brutally roasting each other, while Miliana Faye's super sweet bestie nervously tugs at her arm to go finish their registration. Lewis sincerely thanks Faye for having his back during the brutal entrance exams, but she brushes it off, insisting his insane skills earned that win, all while relentlessly mocking Kane as Miliana finally drags her away. Kane then spins around, casually flashing a massive bag bursting with gold coins. He grins, declaring this is Lewis's official cut of the profits. Lewis's eyes go wide, completely stunned by the insane amount of gold he just bagged. Kane smirks, saying this fat stack is all thanks to Lewis's master plan at the Burna Village Trading Company. Turns out the boys had secretly linked up earlier to hustle some perfume. This was Louis's ultimate hidden weapon. He whipped up a revolutionary, ultra-modern fragrance with a low-key, classy vibe that completely destroys the overpowering basic perfumes everyone else wears. Kane genuinely dug the scent, but was heavily doubting if it would actually sell. Lewis, however, had absolute zero doubts about his masterpiece, and his gamble paid off big time. They are printing massive amounts of money, absolutely shattering Kane's expectations. Kane chuckles, mentioning he is going to spoil his mom with his cut. He stares at Lewis deeply, wondering what kind of insane genius operates inside his brain. He is fiercely curious to figure out how this guy always stays 10 steps ahead. The duo heads toward the front desk, with Lewis whispering a strict order to keep their side hustle completely under wraps. Kane nods, locking it down. Moments later, a teacher hands Lewis his official student credit card, warning him not to lose the vital piece of plastic, and wishing him an epic semester. Walking into registration, Lewis catches the toxic whispers immediately. Snobby elites are side-eyeing him, trashing him as some shameless nobody, and whining about the academy letting ordinary kids crash their exclusive club. The rumor mill is completely out of control. Everyone is buzzing about how he absolutely wrecked Faye and Shane, and how his drama got half the student body kicked to the curb. Hearing this, a light bulb goes off in Lewis's head. Kane leans in and spills the real tea. Seth didn't just break the rules. The psycho actually hired the Underground Assassins Guild. The second the academy, they slapped him with an instant permanent ban. The chilling truth finally hits. Seth had a target painted on his back from day one. But the nightmare isn't over. Kane drops another bombshell. Seth has a twisted older brother named Jess, a total loose cannon who thrives on chaos. So Kane practically begs Lewis to watch his six. Across the crowded room, Lewis's gaze violently. Surprisingly, Lewis's pulse remains dead calm. No sweat, no rage. On the flip side, Jess is vibrating with pure, unhinged excitement, plotting to mentally break Lewis and drag him down as the most pathetic loser in Academy history. Smash cut to the colossal Grand Hall, where the massive crowd of fresh meat nervously shuffles together. The headmaster steps up to the mic, They should totally flex right now. They survived literal hell to stand in this room, but he hits them with a brutal reality check. This is literally just the tutorial level. The training wheels are officially off, and if they want to survive, they need to grind relentlessly and chase god-tier power. He hypes them up, claiming that down the line, these rookies will evolve into the unstoppable titans, carrying the entire empire. Shifting gears, the headmaster declares, it is time for the valedictorian speech. He calls up the undisputed beast of the freshman class, Neil Gunn, demanding he take the podium. Neil violently stomps up those steps with zero hesitation. The entire crowd gasps, caught between absolute disgust and morbid curiosity, because this absolute madman somehow secured the #1 spot. His suffocating bloodlust is choking the entire room. But get this, the dude is literally butt naked. The proctors are completely traumatized, scrambling to tackle this walking PR disaster. But the headmaster raises a hand, ordering them to let them out. Neil glares down at the sea of rookies. Instead of an inspiring speech, he straight up calls them pathetic trash, barking that his only mission is to hunt down and beat them into a bloody pulp. The crowd instantly erupts into a furious uproar. They think he is out of his mind with ego, screaming that just because he does not give him a free pass to treat them like dirt. Neil just roars at them to shut their mouths, and instantly, pin drops silence. Deep down, they know they are nothing compared to his monstrous strength. Watching this unhinged freak show, the staff are sweating bullets. They are dreading the future, terrified of how they are supposed to mentor a literal ticking time bomb, with half of them secretly contemplating handing in their resignation letters. Suddenly, Neil violently hurls his massive hammer off the stage, screaming that his true rival is sitting right there. The giant weapon crashes right at Lewis's feet, cracking the floor. Neil leaps off the stage, landing smoothly on the handle like some unhinged martial arts god, declaring they are about to throw down in a clash of... Instantly, Kane violently shoves his way to the front, sweating buckets, but fiercely shielding his boy. He physically blocks the psycho, frantically barking at Neil to check himself, because the official ceremony is still rolling, and ordering him to back the hell away from Lewis and act right. Neil just smirks, ruthlessly dragging Kane for shaking in his boots, and lumping him in with the rest of the spoon-fed aristocrats. He calls them all frail, pathetic little ghosts. Kane's blood completely boils. His fist clenches, fully prepared to shatter Neil's jaw, but Lewis slides in like a shadow, grabbing Kane's arm and whispering for him to chill out and not take the bait. Seeing this, Neil laughs like a maniac, branding them both spineless wimps, and practically begging them to jump him right then, desperately trying to ignite a massive brawl. Out of nowhere, Brian steps into the danger zone, playing the peacemaker. He puffs out his chest, bragging about being a top-tier, commoner prodigy, and preaches at Kane and Lewis to play nice for their own survival, lecturing them that having a massive ego is a guaranteed one-way ticket to an early grave in this ruthless academy. Neil does not even blink. He violently cuts Brian off, telling the annoying pest to kick rocks, and treating him like an absolute. Brian's face instantly flushes red with utter humiliation, while Kane is practically choking back laughter at the beautiful karma. Meanwhile, Lewis is just scratching his and acting like his personal shield. The crowd is eating it up, whispering in absolute shock that a hyped-up regular dude like Brian just got publicly trashed so brutally. Kane flashes a wicked, satisfied smirk at Brian's massive L, but Neil, fully triggered, violently raises his weapon, ready to cave Brian's skull in. Before the blood spatters, a proctor forcefully intervenes. Brawling in the hallways is strictly forbidden unless they are in a supervised arena, a graded trial, or a sanctioned death match. He makes it crystal clear: throw a single unauthorized punch, and your academy career. The feral energy instantly drains from Neil's eyes. A faint blush of embarrassment hits him as the reality sets in. Nobody wants to get tossed out of an elite powerhouse school on day one. He reluctantly powers down, putting a pin in the massacre for today, but the suffocating tension between him and Lewis still hangs heavy in the air. The instructor finally wraps up the chaotic welcome ceremony, officially cutting the freshmen loose to chill for the rest of the afternoon, with the real nightmare of classes kicking off tomorrow. Walking away, Lewis is mind-boggled over why that naked lunatic suddenly locked onto him like a heat-seeking missile. Kane instantly points finger, mercilessly dragging her into the crossfire. Faye isn't having it. She violently smacks the back of Kane's head, clapping back that their brush with academic death was partially on her honestly confessing that she actually threw down with the naked psycho during the final trials. Their brutal clash ended in a dead tie, but the Academy's twisted rumor mill is buzzing that Neil somehow took an L from Lewis, pouring absolute gasoline on the guy's fiery thirst. Faye lets out a massive sigh of relief, thanking the stars that Louis didn't get his head smashed in, and that the chaotic standoff fizzled out safely. Louis just hits her with a chill smile, promising her they're totally vibing, but Kane suddenly yanks Lewis aside, hissing that they're drawing a massive crowd. Sure enough, the student body is practically glaring daggers at them. Yeah, they're already public enemy number one. Later, the duo hits up the Academy supply shop, and Lewis practically drops his jaw. The price tags here are absolutely insane. The shopgirl brushes it off, claiming it's not a big deal while flexing a premium feather pillow that costs a whopping 30 silver coins. Even that feels like daylight robbery. She gestures to even more ridiculous luxury items, and Lewis facepalms, completely mind-blown by the sheer extortion. Kane shrugs, telling him this is actually the budget aisle. Since he's gonna need his daily essentials anyway, he might as well treat himself. Reality hits Lewis like a truck. Cash and credits totally rule this school. Low-key dipping into his stash, he bags the most basic New Life starter kit for 100 silver coins, sealing the deal with the cashier. He lets out a massive sigh of relief. Thank God he hustled that perfume money earlier, or he'd be totally broke right now. Now he fully intends to wire the leftover cash back to the orphanage. His eyes catch some glowing cleaning potions on the shelf, sparking a brand new brainstorm on how to grind for more coin. Pushing that aside, he spots Faye and Miliana strolling by, chatting about crashing at the dorms. Faye hypes up Miliana about her epic magic awakening ritual going down tomorrow. Lewis scopes out the mountain of shopping bags they're hauling, realizing they dropped a fat stack of cash on his gear, making him reflect on his family's brutal grind. Back at the dorms, he hunts for room 60, praying he isn't bunking with a total meathead. Suddenly, a flying futon blocks his path, slamming right onto the floor. Peeking inside, he catches a squad of upperclassmen cornering a terrified freshman, barking that he better act like their personal servant if he knows what's good for him. They fully trap the kid, who honestly looks bored out of his mind, even as a thug grabs his collar. But suddenly, a finger taps the bully's wrist, sending a violent shockwave ripping right through his arm. Lewis steps up chillingly, reminding them that brawls are banned, and asking if they really want to get kicked out. The whole gang snaps their heads toward him, playing the victim, and swearing they're innocent. Since they think he threw the first punch, one meathead lunges straight for Lewis. But Lewis effortlessly dodges, forcing the attacker's fist to smash right into his own buddy's face, dropping him to the floor like a sack of bricks. Lewis just smirks, acting totally clueless. The guy on the floor whines, demanding to know why his bro just clocked him, but the attacker is totally speechless. Quick as lightning, Lewis kicks another thug, forcing his leg to spasm, and brutally knee a crouching friend. The goons are completely freaking out. Then, Lewis drives a devastating punch straight into the first guy's chest, launching him backward into yet another crony. The ringleader is losing his mind, screaming that Lewis is behind this, but our boy just flashes a wicked grin, taunting that they're just beating themselves up. The thug accuses Lewis of mind-controlling them, screaming that he's a total freak, a word that instantly pisses Lewis off. He stalks forward to teach him a brutal lesson, but the supposedly helpless kid suddenly steps in, begging Lewis to drop the whole thing. Lewis shoots the gang one last icy glare, telling them to scram before he breaks them for real. The cowards scatter like roaches, mumbling pathetic threats as they run. Once they're gone, Lewis bends down to help the new kid grab his scattered gear, spotting the name Kara Candace stitched into his sheets. He tries to spark up a casual chat, but Kara practically vanishes into thin air, radiating extreme, socially awkward energy, a total prime target for bullies. Lewis glances around the empty hall, mind blown by the sheer chaos of day one, just praying that tomorrow's awakening ritual goes smoothly. Meanwhile, in the shadows, a squad of shady guys is already rigging the Great Hall, setting up a massive trap for our boy. Fast forward to the next morning at the Great Hall. The entire student body is packed in for the massive ceremony. Louis rolls up alongside his roommate, Kara, who is still giving him the hardcore silent treatment, not dropping a single word. Lewis locks eyes with the colossal statue, dominating the center of the room, a massive tribute to the goddess of their realm. An old priest steps up to the base of the monument, demanding absolute silence as he introduces the almighty goddess, Gaia. Then, he launches into an epic lore drop. Ages ago, Goddess Gaia forged a utopia where humanity and terrifying beasts actually lived in peace. But peace never lasts. Eventually, the monsters flipped the script, using their insanely overpowered abilities to crush mankind. In no time, colossal dragons dominated the skies. Absolute units of behemoths conquered the earth, and nightmare krakens terrorized the ocean. Caught in the crossfire of these titanic turf wars, the entire planet was absolutely drenched in blood. Humanity was basically pushed to the brink of extinction, getting slaughtered left and right by these apex predators. Watching her beautiful creation turn into a complete slaughterhouse, Gaia was absolutely furious. To level the playing field, she dropped a divine buff on the defenseless humans, granting them the raw magic they desperately lacked. Thanks to her epic blessing, mankind cracked the code to the world's 4 core elements: water, earth, wind, and fire. By mastering these forces, they forged legendary martial arts over centuries of brutal, absolutely relentless warfare. Humanity clawed its way back from the brink of extinction, rising from the ashes to conquer the new world. Today, the freshmen packed in this grand hall carry that legendary bloodline. They are the heirs of the ones who unlock the universe's ultimate cheat code, mana itself. Lewis soaks in every word, eyes narrowed. But something's off. That first hero the headmaster hyped up earlier, completely ghosted from the speech. Nearby, Kara watches him intently. She catches that subtle shift in his vibe, even though our boy is keeping his mouth shut as usual. Suddenly, the high priest steps up, gesturing sharply toward their designated spots. The crew exchanges confused glances, but shuffles over anyway. His voice echoes through the massive room. If they have even a drop of true potential, the raw, elemental energy will literally speak to them. But if their core is completely dead, if they feel absolutely nothing, right on cue, the priest's cold gaze snaps directly to Lewis. A heavy, suffocating hostility instantly fills the air between them. The holy man waves his hand, booming that the awakening ritual is officially going down. Everyone needs to lock in. Lewis can't shake that icy glare. His mind races. Did he somehow piss off a high-ranking official without even trying? The ceremony kicks off as the priest's voice rings out, invoking the 4 primal forces of nature. He orders the freshmen to clear their heads and dive deep into their consciousness. If they focus hard enough, the goddess herself will rip the dormant power. With a flick of his wrist, massive magical glyphs ignite. The blazing insignias of wind, water, earth, and fire lock into the 4 corners of the massive room. Boom! An absolute shockwave of pure energy erupts from the stone statues, pulsing with a blinding neon light that forces the kids to shield their eyes. Then the air literally shimmers. A colossal, ethereal projection of the goddess Gaia materializes right above the crowd, radiating insane amounts of aura. Gazing up into the illusion, the freshmen feel like they've been tossed into deep space, surrounded by a swirling galaxy of vibrant, glowing mana orbs. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Like clockwork, the glowing spheres begin claiming their hosts, matching each kid with... You've got guys celebrating like they just won the lottery, while others look totally crushed. But suddenly, the oxygen gets sucked right out of the room. People start choking back gasps. A massive, raging vortex violently spirals around a single freshman. Holy crap, a dual awakening. Two elemental attributes just... The dust clears, and jaws literally drop. Standing inside that insane hurricane is none other than Neil, the total nobody from the slums. The elite kids are losing their minds. How is a random commoner soaking up mana like a sponge? Whispers explode. Is this kid actually a generational prodigy? Neil is absolutely riding the high. He's just secured the ultimate jackpot, both the blazing fury. The power trip hits him instantly. He flexes his new aura, throwing wild threats left and right, practically demanding everyone bow down to their new king. But right in the middle of his massive ego trip, he glances back. There's Louis, just sitting there, dead silent, totally Neil scoffs. If this dude can't even pull a single element, he's definitely not rival material. But deep down, he's actually praying Louis manages to awaken something. By now, the entire hall has zeroed in on the silent protagonist. Except, absolutely nothing is happening. Total dead zone. Not a single spark of mana is hovering near him. The gossip fires up instantly. They totally expected him to pull off something legendary. Meanwhile, under the surface, Louis is clenching his teeth. He can't sense a damn thing. Panic creeping in, he questions his own existence. Is it because his soul literally belongs to another dimension? Right now, he's just drowning in a suffocating pitch-black void. But no, that logic doesn't hold up. Back when he threw down with Kane, he distinctly felt that eerie crackle of energy every time magic was fired off. Right now, though, it's like his consciousness is being suffocated by a thick, heavy smog. Somebody or something is intentionally blinding his spiritual sight. A spark of pure rage ignites in his chest. Hell no. He's not letting some invisible wall completely crush his future. His willpower violently flares up. Boom. A massive surge of raw mental energy explodes from his core, literally shattering that dark, suffocating fog into pieces. His eyes snap open. Finally, the vivid neon glow of the elements dances all around him. But up on the podium, the priest is sweating bullets, looking absolutely horrified. The stealthy suppression circle he secretly cast to cut Louis off from the mana grid, completely pulverized. The old man is terrified. How the hell did a freshman just brute force his way through that? Louis throws his hand toward a shimmering blue water orb, but it violently jolts away like a magnet repelling metal. He can see the magic, but his hands are grasping empty air. What is going on? He aggressively snatches at the water energy, again and again, his frustration boiling over. But little does he know, he's walking right into the priest's second dirty trap. The corrupt official had stealth planted a brutal confinement hex right under our boy's feet. A high-level curse specifically designed to sever the cord between a human soul and raw mana. And to make it utterly foolproof, he buried illegal black market dampening ores beneath the floorboards, kryptonite for any magic user trying to sync up. The priest's twisted plan was flawless. Let the kid see the prize, but completely paralyze his ability to grab it. Pure psychological torture. It's becoming painfully obvious. There are heavy hitters in the shadows, plotting to absolutely ruin his life, no matter the cost. The corrupt priest just sneers. In his mind, it's Louis' own fault for stepping on the toes of the Academy's elite on day one. Flashback to one of those salty nobles, sliding the priest a fat bribe to rig the test. Now the old man eagerly watches, waiting for Louis to break down and cry before As the clock ticks down, the newly minted magic users start pouring out of the grand hall, their trials successfully wrapped up, but their mouths are running wild. The hallways erupt with ruthless... The crowd starts whispering, calling him a massive fraud, who acted all tough earlier, but is actually just a pathetic weakling who can't even spark a basic element. Right then, Kara locks eyes on something sketchy. He points straight at Louis, then jabs a finger at the floor, finally breaking his silence to warn him about a hidden trap. Louis glances down and realizes the guy is dead right. Without hesitating, he slams his fist into the mat, shattering it to reveal a glowing orb planted underneath. Kara spins around and dips, tossing a quick, "Hurry up!" over his shoulder. Louis flashes a smirk, but can't help feeling totally baffled about who would set him up, and if this was just some insane coincidence. But the second his eyes lock onto the priest, he instantly knows this was a calculated hit. Still, he shoves the thought aside, because now the real main event is about to start. Louis stands tall, letting the ambient energy vibe with him. Out of nowhere, the glowing orbs swarming the other students violently snap toward Louis, spiraling into a massive vortex, looking exactly like the insane tornado Neil pulled off earlier. The rich kids are absolutely losing their minds, completely clueless as to how these nobodies are suddenly flexing god-tier power. The priest drops his jaw in pure shock, totally panicking over how Louis bypassed the curse to awaken his magic. I mean, even a top-tier grandmaster shouldn't be able to shatter a confinement circle and those forbidden magical orbs. Suddenly, a heavy hand grips his shoulder. The priest whips around, only to find the principal glaring daggers at him, barking an order to back off and get out. Trembling, the priest has zero choice but to swallow his pride and obey. The whole hall instantly erupts into whispers, with students eagerly gossiping about why the big boss suddenly showed up. Some bet he just came to check on the supposedly failed commoner, while others suspect some crazy low-key connection between the principal and Louis. But honestly, no one has a clue. Meanwhile, the priest is practically foaming at the mouth, fuming over the principal crashing his perfect setup. With his hands tied, he storms out of the Great Hall, only to bump straight into Jess, lurking in the shadows outside. The priest bitterly admits their scheme totally flopped, and harshly warns the kid to lay low and ghost each other for a bit. Jess nods coldly, promising he will personally take care of the loose ends. Even though he is seething with rage, Jess is absolutely dead set on burying Louis no matter what it takes. Back inside, the principal leans in and whispers a strict order to his right-hand woman, Kylie, telling her to shadow the priest's every move, because there is absolutely zero chance he will let some outsider stir up toxic drama in his academy. With the trash taken out, the principal locks his gaze entirely onto Louis, who is completely zoned out, pulling in multiple elements at once. The boy looks completely lost in another dimension, and honestly, he totally is. Deep inside his own headspace, he is absolutely blown away by the endless sea of elements swarming him. It triggers a flashback to a few days ago, when he and Kane were nerding out over elemental magic. Kane broke it down, explaining that elements are literally the building blocks of the goddess's entire creation. Louis had been super confused back then, wondering why monsters can naturally spam magic the second they are born, while humans have to grind through an awakening just to use a basic spell. Kane revealed that beasts literally have magical cores embedded in their bodies. He even flashed a glowing crystal to Louis, explaining how they act like batteries of pure elemental juice, handing monsters an unfair, built-in magic hack from day one. Humans, on the other hand, are forced to survive a brutal awakening ritual. Only after winning an element's approval can a person finally bend ambient energy to cast spells. During this crazy test, elements that vibe with your aura will naturally gravitate toward you. And once you get that official seal of approval, all you have to do is grind your physical and mental stats to the max. Louis had stared at that crystal, realizing it was basically highly concentrated elemental energy. Kane then dropped the ultimate lore, saying the whole universe is stitched together by elements, but the human eye is just too weak to perceive them. Now trapped in his trance, those words hit him like a truck. Trusting his gut, he bets that the glowing water element drifting in front of his face is his perfect match. But the second his fingertips brush it, an overwhelming rush of pure sensory overload explodes in his brain. He violently experiences everything at once, from the tranquil underwater melodies of sirens to the nightmare-inducing crushing pressure of deep-sea krakens. This godly amount of energy aggressively ravages his veins, sparking a wave of mind-melting agony. It literally feels like the raw, unfiltered will of the goddess is directly tearing through his soul. Louis gasps, feeling completely suffocated, like he is drowning in an endless ocean. The raw intensity is way too much for his brain to process. Watching the boy violently convulse, the principal instantly clocks how insanely lethal things just got. Without missing a beat, the headmaster slams down a massive goddess barrier, throwing a heavy-duty protective shield over the entire hall. Gaia turbocharges the dome, locking down the 4 elemental corners to build an impenetrable cage around Louis as he completely thrashes inside a terrifying hurricane of power. The kids trapped inside the barrier are fully blinded by a harsh, blinding flash, but they can feel the terrifying, suffocating pressure completely radiating off of Louis. They are absolutely terrified and totally freaking out, especially since the boss literally just quarantined the dude inside a magical fallout shelter. Gripping the shield's core, the principal screams for Louis to chill out and anchor his mind against the chaotic storm. Hearing that booming voice, Louis bites down hard, instantly pulling his grip back on. In a heartbeat, the violent storm finally dies down. He brushes a stray tear from his cheek, completely aware that he just barely dodged a massive bullet, since his sanity was literally hanging by a thread. As he locks his eyes onto the swirling energy, something clicks in his brain. These glowing specks look exactly like the subatomic particles from his past life. And if they follow the exact same rules, tweaking their frequency could unlock some insane power. The second that theory crosses his mind, a single speck violently shatters, triggering a chain reaction that whips the chaotic energy right back into a frenzy. The headmaster is left utterly speechless, having never seen anything this wild. A colossal prismatic cyclone violently erupts right in front of him. The entire student body is shaking in their boots, completely paralyzed by this monstrous flex of power. And even the headmaster has to admit, this situation has totally spiraled out of his control. Right in the eye of the storm, Lewis is just chilling, analyzing the raw energy like it is just another high school science fair project. It hits him that humanity could easily weaponize magic, exactly like the beasts do, as long as they hack these exact wavelengths. The glowing energy slowly seeps straight into his veins, while Lewis obsesses over the fact that quantum particles never actually stop vibrating. By matching that exact rhythm with his breathing and internal aura, the raw power instantly flows through his system like butter. If he keeps this flawless balance going, he could literally forge a mana core right inside his chest and unlock some seriously god-tier spells. Out of nowhere, the leftover energy shoots straight into his skull, flooding his mind completely. The moment his eyelids snap open, his pupils flash with a blinding icy mandala. In a split second, razor-sharp frost spikes materialize out of thin air, circling his entire body. They brutally shatter the protective force field, blasting a shockwave of frost across the entire auditorium. Lewis literally starts floating off the ground, practically vibrating with raw energy. The crowd absolutely loses it, scrambling for their lives, as a massive glacier instantly coats every single thing it touches. Glancing at his half-frozen pupils, the headmaster knows it is time to stop playing around. First things first, he has to shut this kid down. Yanking a shimmering gilded crest from his robes, he begs the Divine Mother to bless the campus with the ultimate hellfire. Thrusting the crest high into the air, it erupts with a blinding radiance, instantly summoning a towering wall of blazing heat that swallows the entire school grounds. The inferno crashes right into Lewis, and the second the heat wraps around him, his freezing armor finally starts melting away. A blinding shockwave of light detonates outward from the auditorium, completely illuminating the campus and catching eyes from miles away. Bystanders all over the university spot the unnatural flare, utterly baffled, and questioning what on earth is going down in the main hall. Lewis slowly drops back onto the marble tiles as the headmaster stares him down, racking his brain over exactly which attribute could forge something this close to absolute zero. All the while, Lewis is completely zoned out, trapped deep inside his own headspace. In his mind's eye, he watches the raw cosmic dust floating directly in his palm, buzzing at breakneck speeds. Bit by bit, they actually start merging into one. Running complex math in his head, he figures out that, by perfectly splicing the big four attributes together, totally unique chemical reactions will trigger birthing brand new powers. Right on cue, the inner currents of breeze and moisture effortlessly intertwine. Still, he is totally clueless about how to actually weaponize this hack. Honestly, he really just needs a solid mentor right now. With the mental fog getting thicker, he knows it is time to snap back to reality. Blinking away the haze, he finds the top dog towering right over him. Peeking past the old man, he spots the massive burning dome, locking them inside. The headmaster casually drops his arm, instantly dissolving the fiery wall, and totally deadpans, asking if the kid even realizes the insane stunt he just pulled. Catching a glimpse of his classmates looking like literal popsicles, the gravity of his little experiment hits him like a truck. Blushing hard, he chuckles awkwardly, admitting he went a tiny bit overboard, and thanking the old guy for saving his neck. Pivoting to his right-hand assistant, Kylie, the boss mentions he is hauling the boy up to his suite, leaving her to deal with this icy disaster zone. Motioning for the kid to tag along, he offers an open floor for any burning questions on their walk-up. Within minutes, they step into the lavish executive suite. A towering idol of the Earth Goddess glares down at the boy like a strict parent. Kicking things off, the boss drops a huge congratulations for unlocking every single attribute, right as our guy chugs a mana elixir to stop his brain from totally frying. Nodding along, he casually flexes his hand, letting pure energy dance across his fingertips. The old man is seriously blown away. Juggling raw power this flawlessly as a total rookie is practically unheard of, making it super hard to believe he literally just got his powers. The kid's potential is actually terrifying. Without missing a beat, the headmaster slides a heavy grimoire across the desk, telling him to memorize every single page to level up his spell casting. He casually mentions he only really mains dirt and breeze magic, so if the kid wants to learn pyromancy or water arts, he better go bother Faye and Miliana for the cheat codes. Hailing from elite top-tier bloodlines, these two are practically walking encyclopedias of forbidden techniques and hidden lore. Principal Smith doesn't waste a second, immediately summoning his top-tier apprentice Kylie right into the room. Slithering in as a mystical serpent, she instantly shapeshifts into an absolutely stunning girl. Smith quickly does the introductions, dropping the absolute bombshell that Kylie is now officially Lewis's personal bodyguard. Catching on to the heavy vibes, Kylie suggests they bounce to a more secure spot, where prying eyes and eavesdroppers can't track them. She escorts the crew straight to Lewis gives the creepy ruins a super skeptical look, but Smith reveals this rundown dump is actually his personal secret training ground. He's totally souped up the entire zone with heavy-duty earth magic, making the walls virtually indestructible and dead silent. Wasting literally zero time, Kylie challenges Lewis to flex his elemental power. Lewis steps right up, showing off how he accidentally unlocked the ultra-rare ice element during his awakening ritual. He breaks down the insane physics by supercharging two different elements and forcefully merging them together. He birthed a brand new power, straight up calling it the ice element. Smith's jaw practically hits the floor, admitting that mixing elements is completely unheard of. Hearing the boss say that Kylie is absolutely mind-blown, totally captivated by the freezing aura, a wild smirk creeps across her face. In a split second, she dashes straight at Lewis, shouting that she wants to taste this ice magic firsthand. She unleashes a brutal barrage of fists, but Lewis casually blocks the onslaught with his frosty magic, effortlessly delivering a massive counterpunch that sends her skidding backward. Shaking off the hit, she instantly realizes this elemental fusion is straight up broken. Whipping her head toward the boss, she asks if anyone in history has ever pulled off a stunt like this. Smith shakes his head gravely, swearing it hasn't happened a single time since the dawn of magic itself. Generations of scholars have obsessed over this power, and countless prodigies have literally sacrificed their entire lives trying to crack the code. Yet every single one utterly failed to fuse elements. Your average mage is stuck with just one measly attribute, and only a microscopic fraction of elites can even juggle a few. Even Lady Miriam, the absolute strongest saint in the Empire, and a literal once-in-a-century prodigy, could wield three distinct elements, but the second she tried mashing two together, it totally backfired, pushing her body and mind straight to the razor's edge of absolute insanity. It suddenly clicks for Lewis. Basic humans are biologically incapable of this elemental mashup. Smith jumps in, explaining that a human vessel has to physically and mentally supercharging elements the way Lewis just casually did demands an ungodly amount of willpower to steer that volatile energy and vent it without literally exploding. Only by forcefully juggling multiple powers at once can you smash them together into something entirely new. But one tiny slip-up means instant death. Kylie starts doing the math, realizing this kid's potential is already rivaling a legendary saint, even if he's totally clueless about his own hype. Craving a real fight, she decides to put him through the ringer, sparking up her blazing fiery aura and diving headfirst into round two. As their elemental blasts violently collide, Principal Smith keeps narrating the deep lore, revealing Lady Miriam's crazy theory to safely juggle all that magic you'd basically need the indestructible tank-like anatomy of a literal dragon, something tough enough to eat the explosive shockwaves of colliding elements for breakfast, or rely on magic beast crystals, just like the monsters do. Mid-fight, Lewis dodges a hit and shouts asking how that wild research actually panned out. Smith grimaces, calling it an absolute bloodbath. Every single experiment across the Empire crashed and burned, getting the whole concept totally banned and slapped with a massive illegal status. He never in a million years thought some kid would shatter the ultimate taboo, and watching it unfold live right in front of him is seriously frying his brain. Lewis suddenly connects the dots by mentally routing the elements through completely separate mana pathways he flawlessly bypassed, the internal explosions that literally killed everyone else. Kylie sharply tells him to wipe that smug look off his face, aggressively reminding him that playing with fire is still incredibly deadly. Louis nods, fully grasping this kind of freakish power dragged intense heat onto him in his past life, but there is zero chance he's letting it spiral out of control this time around. Kylie hits him with a harsh reality check. If this gets leaked, absolute hell would break loose. The boss might have assigned her as his shield, but she absolutely despises dragging messy, unnecessary drama into her life, so she practically orders him to keep a low profile. Lewis agrees to chill, casually dropping another massive truth bomb. His so-called ice element is really just an overpowered, broken hack of the basic water attribute he already. Utterly baffled, Smith asks what he means by a hack, prompting Lewis to flex that his insanely beefed-up mental fortitude lets him literally crush liquid water into solid ice, using sheer atmospheric pressure. Mid-sentence, he smirks and taunts Kylie to bring the heat one more time. As she fiercely dives in, Lewis channels his water mana in real time. The insane, crushing pressure forcefully mutates the rippling water into rock-hard frost. A massive freezing barrier erupts right in front of him. Kylie's brain totally short-circuits at the sight, while Principal Smith looks like he just saw a literal ghost. Lewis casually dubs this monster technique the super ionic ice form. Staring in total disbelief, Kylie demands to know how he just morphed basic water into a bizarre ice that literally deflects her blazing inferno while somehow radiating its own intense heat. Playing the science nerd, Lewis explains that extreme pressure violently shifts, and he just copy-pasted that modern physics logic directly into his magic. Shaken to his absolute core, the principal slowly turns to the boy, muttering that this world is full of insanely deep, unmapped mysteries. Treating him like a total VIP, he tells Lewis his door is literally always open, vowing to personally mentor him in controlling this broken power set. He even sweetens the deal, offering to stamp Lewis's name on any future game-breaking discoveries, getting the kid hyped beyond belief. Meanwhile, Kylie is practically sweating bullets, side-eyeing the boss, and asking if he's genuinely ready to go to war to protect this walking hazard. Since this wild anomaly isn't etched in any history books, and might just be a total fluke, the headmaster drops some wisdom. He points out that half the spells in existence were born from pure chance, so he's not ruling anything out. Kylie nods along, locking in her boss's orders. She already knows our boy is going to be a massive headache and an absolute grind to manage, but she fully commits to the hustle. With that, she dips out to handle her other tasks. The headmaster then slides our hero a mental recovery elixir, promising it'll reboot his drained energy for a bit. But he gives a strict warning: do not spam this stuff. With day 1 of classes dropping tomorrow, he tells him to head back and crash. Lewis downs the vial, completely mind-blown that brain-boosting potions are actually a thing here. Back at the dorms, the elixir has him absolutely wired. Sleep is off the table, so he decides to just grind out some meditation until sunrise. Stepping inside, he catches Kara, still wide awake. He raises an eyebrow, asking if the guy was seriously waiting up for him. Lewis keeps it real and drops a genuine thank you, totally aware that Kara saved his skin today. The headmaster had mentioned some ultra-rare artifact hidden in the hall, and wondered how Lewis even spotted it. Kara just ignores the question entirely. Instead, he smoothly slides Lewis a premium black. Suddenly it all clicks. No wonder Kara knows everything. The rich kid then quietly slips out, whispering a quick thanks before letting the door click shut. Lewis smirks. He gets it now. Kara is just settling the score for getting bailed out on day 1, plus catching the eye of a wealthy merchant's heir. That is just top-tier networking. Fast forward to the next morning at the Candria Arcane Training Facility. The freshman squad gathers around as their new combat instructor, Derek, steps onto the mat. The guy is supposed to teach martial arts basics, but his whole vibe is incredibly weird and deeply unsettling. The entire class, guys and girls alike, instantly catch the ick. Even Kane is visibly cringing at this dude's creepy aura. But Louis He is laser-focused on the instructor's insanely shredded build, totally hyped to learn some next-level conditioning. Derek's radar instantly locks onto our boy, and with lightning speed, he practically teleports right behind him. Lewis reads the movement in a split second, while Kane nearly jumps out of his skin. The creepy teacher leans in way too close, hyping up Lewis's absolute god-tier physique, and whispering how badly he wants to push him to the limit. A shiver runs down Lewis's spine. He is completely grossed out, but stays on high alert. Derek then pivots to Kane, completely roasting his scrawny build. He calls him out for being nothing but flashy blonde hair and zero muscle. Kane grits his teeth in annoyance as the instructor brushes past him. The session kicks off with standard academy tradition, the upperclassmen flexing on the newbies. A squad of seniors with Jess leading the pack struts into the gym. They loudly trash-talk the fresh meat, scoffing about how even the elite bloodlines have totally fallen off. They march in with their chests puffed out, acting like they own the entire building. Kane and Lewis share an annoyed eye roll. Derek cues the upperclassmen to show off their raw power. One cocky senior steps right up to the magic-infused pec deck, an absolute beast of a machine for the chest and arms. He grabs the handles and cranks out reps without breaking a sweat. Mind you, these plates are magically dense. He's casually pushing a solid 1 ton. The freshmen's jaws hit the floor. They know they couldn't even budge that. Across the room, another veteran is rotating on a spinner at dizzying speeds, while a third guy is sprinting on a treadmill, dragging 250 kilos of dead weight chained to his ankles. Derek claps his hands, telling the rookies it's their turn to suffer, though he warns them not to literally snap their bones. Predictably, the newbies get absolutely humbled. They are gasping, failing, and showing zero athletic potential. The seniors are laughing their heads off, until the gym suddenly goes dead silent. Someone is absolutely obliterating the equipment. It's Lewis. He is treating this hardcore workout like a total joke, The guy is effortlessly repping 10 tons, blazing on the treadmill so fast the motor is practically screaming, and spinning with the violent force of a literal hurricane. The crowd is completely paralyzed. They're whispering that it's physically impossible, instantly accusing him of juicing on performance-enhancing potions. Meanwhile, Neil is treating this like a bitter rivalry. Neil, determined to be the ultimate alpha, is operating in a whole different universe. He aggressively maxes out at 15 tons, slamming the iron like it's made of styrofoam. He literally shackles a 20-ton weight block to his body and hits the treadmill, jogging as if he's on a breezy Sunday morning walk. The rest of the class is trapped in sheer horror, watching this absolute demon in human skin tear up the gym. The second his set is done, he violently slams the colossal weight block right at Lewis's feet. The floor quakes with a deafening boom, making his aggressive challenge crystal clear. In Neil's twisted head, this raw display of muscle automatically crowns him the king. He glares dead into Lewis's eyes and growls at him to block out the background noise. He wants to throw down right here, right now, and settle this heavy tension once and for all. But there's a massive plot twist Louis couldn't care less. To our boy, this isn't some epic anime rivalry. All he sees is a meathead with a fragile, bloated ego, desperately begging for validation as the strongest alpha in the school. Honestly, that pathetic desperation just makes Lewis cringe even harder. He rubs his temples, letting out a heavy sigh. He is already deeply exhausted by this guy's dramatic obsession with him. Bro, it is literally day one at this academy, and they are literally just doing a basic warm-up. The whole point is just to tank up their physical stats and build stamina, nothing deep. Lewis straight up calls Neil out, telling him that flexing his muscles for a crowd is seriously cringe and immature. But before they can even finish, Jess takes it entirely personal. Lewis wasn't even talking to the guy, but Jess instantly assumes he is the target of the shade, and his face twists into pure rage. He snaps at Lewis, warning him not to get a big head, just because he packs a little more punch than the rest of the class. To Jess, raw muscle is basically useless in the long run. Real endgame power. That comes entirely from your elemental attributes. That immediately hooks Louis' attention. He tilts his head and asks what exactly an attribute even is. Neil does not miss a beat. Pumping out his chest, he proudly brags that he is rocking a dual core of fire and earth. The second those words drop, Jess looks absolutely mind-blown. A regular civilian, awakening both flame and earth. That is basically unheard of, and even this hater has to admit how insane that luck is. Neil then pivots the spotlight back to Lewis and asks what kind of element he is packing. Without batting an eye, Lewis casually drops that he rolls with water. Jess practically chokes on his own spit before bursting into hysterical laughter. Out of every single power in the world, this guy pulled water. To him, that sounds unbelievably pathetic. He blatantly roasts Lewis, asking what a water user is even supposed to do in an actual street fight. What is he gonna aggressively splash his enemies and pray they slip on a puddle? Lewis just stares back, utterly confused, zero clue why his element is treated like a total meme. That is when Miliana finally steps in to break it down. She explains that water-based martial arts are basically viewed as bottom-tier trash, compared to literally every other elemental skill tree out there. The best attack they get is Aqua Blade, a move that screams defense and support way more than actual damage and destruction. Because of that exact reason, society treats water users like complete jokes, viewing them as vastly inferior to brawlers with highly aggressive and purely lethal powers. Lewis goes dead quiet for a second, letting that heavy reality check sink in. Up until this exact moment, he had zero idea his affinity was considered this much of a downgrade. Jess aggressively dials up the disrespect, telling him straight to his face that no matter how ripped his muscles get, awakening a water core basically hardlocks his future into a dead end. The entire squad of bullies backing him up instantly cracks up at the roast. One of the sidekicks smirks, pointing out that in the entire history of the world, not a single Hydro user has ever hit the legendary Grandmaster tier. Riding that high, they sarcastically advise Lewis to just accept his NPC status and stick to playing the background medic for the real main characters with top-tier elements. In their eyes, his absolute peak potential is hiding behind the heavy hitters and throwing out buffs while they carry the raid. Lewis immediately gets ticked off by their sheer arrogance. His eyes go cold, and he sharply asks if they are dead serious about a water specialist being permanently locked out of anything above the master rank, even if they grind their absolute hardest. Jess acts like you just asked the dumbest question ever, brushing it off as basic common sense. He scoffs right in Lewis's face, claiming that a lowly peasant obviously knows nothing about how the real world operates, which is exactly why the elites need to drop a harsh reality check. That is the final straw for Kane, who totally loses his cool and snaps at the rich kids. Faye instantly backs him up, ordering the bullies to shut their mouths, because they clearly have zero clue who they are actually messing with. The tension between the two squads skyrockets, turning into a screaming match that echoes across the field. Out of nowhere, Jess pivots toward the instructor and loudly reminds him that upperclassmen are literally supposed to be the gold standard for the rookies. Then, he pitches a brand new training method. He argues that mastering magic isn't just about mana capacity. It requires a tanky physique that can survive brutal damage. According to his twisted logic, physical endurance drills are the absolute best way to level up both raw durability and magical focus, because eating heavy attacks directly forces the human body to evolve under fire. Flashing a seriously toxic smirk, Jess suggests a friendly sparring match that basically doubles as a human punching bag test. He loudly promises the crowd that he is going to personally show the fresh meat exactly why the water element belongs in the garbage bin. Right at that moment, Kane quickly leans into Lewis's ear to drop a massive warning. He reveals the dark truth. Jess is actually the big brother of the same kid Lewis absolutely humiliated earlier today. Kane anxiously adds that water users have famously horrible defense when it comes to shielding their physical bodies from heavy trauma. Long story short, Jess is setting up a legal excuse to literally beat Lewis half to death on stage. But even with that terrifying red flag, Lewis brushes off the warning like it is absolutely nothing. Instead, he pivots toward the instructor, completely unfazed, and drops a bombshell. In his eyes, there is absolutely no such thing as a top-tier or garbage attribute. The instructor instantly takes that flex, as Lewis locking in for the duel, and our boy does not hesitate to back it up. He vows to throw down with the upperclassmen, solo, ready to shatter their twisted hierarchy once and for all. Off to the side, the older guys are practically foaming at the mouth, itching for the beatdown to kick off. Kane desperately grabs him for one final reality check, begging him to back out, but Lewis just hits him with a chill smirk, swearing he has it in the bag. The instructor then lays down the law for the brawl, making it crystal clear that casting spells is strictly locked to the dead center of the ring, demanding that these guys rely purely on raw, unadulterated muscle to test exactly how much grit they have packed into their physical builds. Oh, and zero evasive maneuvers are allowed. Everyone stepping into that pit has to plant their feet like concrete, and just tank whatever brutal hits come their way. Just as a massive shockwave of pure hellfire suddenly detonates right next to them. Neil comes rocketing out of the inferno, cackling like an absolute psychopath. He screams at the top of it, hyped out of his mind to finally catch a legitimate fade. The older guys instantly get triggered by this totally unhinged interruption. One pissed-off upperclassman stomps forward, veins popping from his forehead, barking that he is about to personally school this arrogant freshman on how to address the big dogs. The dude cranks his earth magic to the max, coating his entire frame in jagged, heavy-duty rock armor before blitzing forward at breakneck speed. His charge looks completely lethal, the kind of strike that turns bones to dust. But before he even closes the gap, bam, a lightning-fast fist violently caves in his face. The sheer, catastrophic momentum, launching him airborne across the entire battleground. Jaws hit the floor as Neil casually struts out from the dust cloud. Witnessing that one-shot knockout, Jess and his crew are left absolutely paralyzed in pure, unadulterated shock. The guy who just ate dirt is completely short-circuiting. His earth shell is notoriously hyped up as an absolute tank of an ability. Yet Neil just vaporized it with one casual punch. Seething with rage and completely humiliated, Jess furiously commands his squad to jump Neil all at once and brutally stomp him into the dirt. The heavyweights swarm in like a pack of rabid wolves, but instead of sweating it, Neil looks like a kid in a candy store. Ripping his shirt to shreds in maximum dramatic flair, he flexes a crazy shredded physique, totally eating up the spotlight. Flashing a feral grin, he dives headfirst, straight into the meat grinder. The barrage of hits crashing into him does not even leave a scratch. While he just eats their pathetic combos for breakfast, every counterattack he dishes out is straight up lethal. He violently grabs one guy with enough kinetic energy to bowl over half the squad behind him. But during the chaos, Neil leaves his blind spot wide open for a split second. A rock-wielding senior spots the golden opportunity and lunges, dead set on exploiting this fatal flaw. He unleashes his ultimate haymaker, but the exact millisecond his fist connects, his massive ego crumbles to ash. Instead of the sheer recoil violently shatters his own reinforced gauntlet. The moment that sweet adrenaline wears off, an agonizing shockwave rips through his nervous system, and he screams loud enough to rattle the bleachers. The terrified upperclassman finally connects the dots. Neil is hyper-focusing his aura into microscopic pinch points, hardening his muscles to god-tier levels of durability. His brain simply cannot compute how a lowly first year is already flexing this kind of insane aura mastery. Before he can even catch his breath, Neil delivers a devastating roundhouse, punting him across the combat zone and leaving him crumpled against the barricade. Through all this chaos, the instructor is just watching. Without missing a beat, he lazily drops some wisdom, reminding the peanut gallery that no matter how cracked they get in combat, sleeping on the basics is a literal death sentence, unless they actually want to wind up face-planting into the dirt like that absolute amateur. Lewis watches the bloodbath unfold, cold sweat dripping down his neck. Even he has to admit, Neil is serving up a straight-up horrific match. He leans in nervously, asking Kane if their crazed friend just crossed the line. But before Kane can even drop a response, a brutal ambush gets launched right at their backs. Kane instantly pings the threat right as Faye and Lewis lock onto another rival closing in from dead ahead. Without a second thought, Kane and Faye slide into formation, shielding Lewis like absolute bosses. Plus, they are beyond ready to show these stuck-up veterans that the new kids are not just free XP waiting to be farmed. Sandwiched safely between his day ones, Lewis slowly tilts his head up, locking a dead-serious glare with Jess from across the war zone. With ice-cold swagger, Lewis announces that it is finally time for the main event to kick off. In response, Jess just hits him with a condescending sneer. Jess scoffs, telling him he's got a massive ego, if he seriously thinks he's the star of the... He completely roasts him, calling him a cocky, clueless amateur, who clearly doesn't know his place in the food chain. Flexing his royal status, Jess loudly brags that he's the heir to the Harry family, a bloodline dripping with absolute power and elite status. Swearing on his family crest, he promises to personally school a peasant like Louis on what real high-class pride and dignity actually look like. In his elite little bubble, respect and honor are VIP traits strictly reserved for true nobles. The second the words leave his mouth, Jess explodes into the sky, rocketing down at Lewis at breakneck speed. He triggers Gale penetration, locking onto Lewis, with absolutely lethal intent. But right before impact, Lewis reacts. A massive frozen shield instantly materializes out of thin air to protect him. Jess's jaw practically hits the floor. Not only does the barrier completely tank his strike without a single scratch, but the sub-zero aura radiating off it is so utterly brutal that he's violently forced to jump back just to survive. Staring at his own palms in pure shock, Jess notices his skin physically frosting over just from tapping that ice. His mind is absolutely short-circuiting. There is no way this monstrous chilling energy is just basic water magic. Chill as ever, Lewis shrugs and casually drops that it's just a creative little twist on basic hydro spell. Watching from the sidelines, Meliana narrows her eyes, wildly intrigued. Even she has never witnessed liquid manipulated like this before. The rest of the crowd is totally lost. A solid frozen barrier is completely unheard of, and bending water elements this way completely shatters reality. Sweating Jess flat out refuses to accept what just happened, desperately gaslighting himself into believing it's just a cheap hydro trick. Meanwhile, Brian groans under his breath that this year's rookies are absolute menaces. But Jess snaps back. Freaky powers or not, he is dead set on absolutely wrecking Lewis today. Glancing over, Jess spots Neil, totally ragdolling the upperclassmen left and right. Without missing a beat, he shifts gears and sprints straight for him. Catching him closing in, a wicked grin spreads across Neil's face. Fresh meat. He's hyped to use this noble as his new personal punching bag. Neil throws a devastating right hook, but Jess glides right past it like a ghost, laughing in his face as he mocks his terrible aim. Neil's smile only gets crazier. He loves a moving target. For the next solid minute, Jess dances around the arena with insane agility, leaving Neil swinging at thin air. But here's the kicker. Beating Neil was never his actual goal. He's been playing Neil this whole time, using the wild brawl as a massive smokescreen to creep back up on Lewis. The microsecond he finds a blind spot, Jess completely ditches Neil and bolts at Lewis, radiating pure, unfiltered murder. But nope. Out of absolutely nowhere, Neil blitzes in from the front, aggressively cutting Jess off with a brutal counterstrike. Annoyed, Jess flips out of the way effortlessly, instantly teleporting right to Lewis's blind spot for a filthy cheap shot. Smash! Another glacial wall erupts, shutting Jess down instantly. Lewis just chuckles, completely roasting the guy for constantly yapping about high-class pride, when his entire playbook relies on cowardly little backstabs. To Louis, that whole aristocratic honor code is absolute garbage. Jess spits right back, barking that true elites simply do whatever dirty work it takes to secure the big win. In his head, victory is basically his birthright. As magic flashes and ice shatters, the two of them keep trading insanely toxic, sarcastic shade. Being sidelined is driving Neil absolutely insane. Completely fed up with the disrespect, he violently crashes their party and starts swinging wild. Lewis barely ducks a heavy haymaker, staring at Neil like he completely lost his mind. Weren't they supposed to be on the same squad? Plus, suddenly getting shoved into a messy 2-on-1 street fight is seriously starting to get on his nerves. Spotting the chaos, Jess thinks he just struck gold. With Lewis distracted, he goes straight for the kill, lunging forward. But at the absolute last millisecond, Neil intercepts him and aggressively bulldozes the noble out of the way. Tumbling across the dirt, Jess explodes in absolute rage over this unhinged friendly fire. But Neil just screams at him to stop treating him like a joke, and wake up to the fact that jumping this guy is their only logical play. With the annoying rich kid tossed aside, Neil zeroes in on Lewis, his eyes burning with pure hype. Cracking his knuckles, he tells Lewis that since the garbage is out of the way, it's finally time for a real man-to-man brawl. Watching from the sidelines, the instructor is heavily analyzing the duo. He realizes they are both running insanely lethal setups, relying heavily on rapid agility, pinpoint accuracy, and point-blank brawling. To him, these kids are absolute combat prodigies. If they keep evolving at this crazy pace, they could seriously dethrone William himself. Lewis flawlessly evades a relentless barrage of psycho swings. Then, waiting for the perfect window, he aggressively traps Neil's wrist and drives a brutal jab straight for his windpipe. The impact is devastating. Neil violently chokes, desperately gasping for air, as his lungs shut down for a second. Watching this from afar, Faye completely loses her mind, screaming at Lewis because crushing a guy's throat is way too lethal for a school fight. But that single microsecond of distraction costs Lewis everything. Out of nowhere, a breathless Neil snaps his hand up, locking Lewis into a death grip. Pure, unadulterated fury ignites in Neil's eyes. Pinning his target down at last, Neil snarls at Lewis, promising to show him what absolute agony actually feels like. He violently snaps his head forward, delivering a brutal headbutt. Gritting his teeth, he mutters that a scrub like Lewis had no right pushing him this far. Neil smirks, warning him that the real beatdown is just beginning. But Lewis just gives him a dead-eyed stare, completely unbothered, and drops a reality check. Academy guidelines strictly forbid students from crippling each other on purpose. And as far as Lewis is concerned, Neil just sprinted right past that boundary. Without missing a beat, Louis unleashes his inner water aura. Instantly violent currents start swirling around his entire body. Seeing this torrential energy explode outward, Neil's eyes light up with twisted excitement, though his massive ego remains perfectly intact. To him, some basic splash attacks aren't going to do a damn thing. Since the instructor literally stated this was a pure physical endurance test, Neil stubbornly refuses to dodge, choosing to tank the hit head-on. Lewis doesn't even blink at Neil's reckless bravado. Ice cold, he simply asks if he'd prefer something with a bit more bite. The second those words drop, the surging water flash freezes, trapping Neil's entire body in a solid block of jagged ice. Frostbite rips through Neil's skin, sending blinding agony straight to his nerves. Desperate, he ignites his fire attribute, torching the frozen prison until it shatters. But as the steam clears, he emerges looking like an absolute psycho. A manic, bloodthirsty grin stretches across his face, as he laughs, yelling that clashing with Lewis is only leveling up his power. High on the adrenaline, he demands they keep going. Flashback to years ago, when Neil was barely a little kid. He's huddled by a dark river, desperately gulping down water, while trying to make sense of the mysterious burning agony constantly wrecking his tiny body. Shivering alone in the pitch-black woods, glowing eyes suddenly surround him. A pack of starving wolves inches closer, and pure terror spikes through his veins. Before the kid can even flinch, the beasts pounce viciously, sinking their fangs into his flesh. Neil thrashes wildly, throwing up his arms in a desperate panic, but a massive wolf crushes his arm in its jaws, while another shreds deep into his calf. But even back then, Neil was built entirely different. Fueled by raw, monstrous strength, he physically pries the predator's jaws apart and yanks his bleeding arm out. Searing rage detonates inside his mind. The overwhelming physical trauma pushes him into a blind, feral frenzy, and he literally rips the entire pack to shreds with his bare hands. That bloody massacre permanently rewires his brain, standing among the mangled corpses of the wolves. Neil has a sick epiphany. Agony is the only proof that you're breathing. Raw, unfiltered power is the only way you stay alive. Every ounce of suffering just forges him into a sharper weapon. It's survival of the fittest out here, and this literal toddler just butchered a dozen apex predators solo. That defining moment is exactly why Neil is addicted to getting hurt. To this absolute menace, taking damage is his entire identity. Snapping back to reality, Neil aggressively blitzes toward Lewis. Sprinting like a madman, he screams that they are exactly the same. He genuinely believes they are both freaks of nature, starving for endless power. Lewis shuts that nonsense down immediately by tapping into his martial arts core, funneling pure concentration and explosive kinetic energy into one flawless strike. He launches a devastating roundhouse kick, smashing his heel straight into Neil's face. The impact sounds like a gunshot, but instead of getting knocked out, Neil literally thrives on the crushing blow. Seeing him smile through the blood completely pisses Lewis off. He unleashes a savage, relentless combo, battering Neil with a hurricane of heavy strikes. Yet Neil just keeps eating the punches, grinning like a demon, and savoring every broken bone and bruised muscle. Off to the side, Faye and Kane are watching this bloodbath in stunned silence. If this keeps up, Lewis is straight up going to catch a murder charge. But what really sends chills down their spines is the fact that Neil is somehow getting faster and deadlier with every hit he takes. Panicking as the spar turns into a death match, the duo realizes they have to step in and shut Lewis down before someone gets buried. Refusing to drop, Neil roars that the showdown isn't over. He throws himself at Lewis for round 2, but Lewis smoothly sidesteps the savage tackle. In his head, Lewis is frantically calculating how to pacify this absolute lunatic without getting himself expelled for excessive force. Figuring a deep freeze is his best bet for crowd control, Lewis orders the psycho to chill out, before sinking a brutal gut punch deep into his stomach. Following through, he triggers his Ice Tempest skill, instantly locking Neil to the wall in a massive glacier. But Neil just won't quit. He flares his fiery aura back up, melting the thick frost, restraining him into literal steam. Watching this chaotic spectacle from the sidelines, the instructor finally perks up, his eyes gleaming. As far as the teacher is concerned, the real show has finally started. Neil crashes into the dirt, but the guy straight up refuses to tap out. Spitting grit, he roars that a pathetic hit like that will not even scratch his itch for battle, challenging Lewis to bring the heat and hit him with every ounce of power he is hiding. But before the dust can even settle, the vibe shifts completely. Neil tries to launch himself at Lewis, but a massive invisible wave crushes him flat against the concrete, like a bug. His brain barely registers the impact before Kylie's boots step into his vision. Glaring down at his totally knocked out body, she coldly mutters that he crossed the line way too far this time. To her, he is not some epic warrior, just a brainless meathead who lets his rage completely hijack his senses. The instructor practically breaks his neck, whipping around to face Kylie. It is agonizingly obvious the dude is absolutely down bad for her, because his entire face lights up like a neon sign, completely hyped to finally see his longtime crush standing right in front of him. In his head, she somehow leveled up her gorgeous looks, and the fierce boss energy rolling off her has him totally hypnotized. Too bad Kylie instantly friend-zones his hype, and drags him kicking and screaming back to reality. She hits him with a brutal reality check, demanding to know his master plan. If a freshman ends up resting in peace on day literally 1, she aggressively reminds him about the massive warning the headmaster dropped on him just hours ago. The instructor's face flushes beet red as he scrambles to cover his tracks. He swears up and down he is not just some reckless, privileged fool, insisting he only wanted to unlock the rookie's hidden talents through brutal combat. Kylie violently rolls her eyes and smirks, telling him he better pray to God he is just a colossal idiot, because she was specifically contracted to be Lewis's personal bodyguard, and he better wrap his head around how dangerous that assignment truly is. Without skipping a beat, she drops the bomb that the headmaster wants his head on a platter in the main office right after the bell rings. The guy instantly groans, knowing a massive soul-crushing lecture is locked in. But even with a screaming match in his future, glancing back at the battered rookies, he cannot deny the absolute god-tier potential simmering underneath their bruises. Lewis, Faye, and Kane totally steal the spotlight, radiating an energy completely out of the other students' league. He barks at Neil to throw a shirt on, sighing that he is willing to slide this psycho behavior under the rug just this once. But he makes it crystal clear if Neil lets his inner demon take the wheel again, his academic credits are getting instantly vaporized. Neil totally tunes the threat out, his brain hyper-fixating on a much wilder prize. A wicked grin spreads across his face as he processes the insane truth he just tanked fatal hits from a literal Grandmaster-tier beast. But then reality hits him like a truck. If he keeps shredding his clothes every single time he throws a punch, he is going to go bankrupt just buying new uniforms. To fund his chaotic lifestyle, he decides it is officially time to start farming low-level monsters for cash. The final bell screams through the arena, wrapping up the chaos. The instructor waves off the upperclassmen, letting them limp away, while he orders the battered freshmen to hit the dirt, chug their healing potions, and catch their breath. But before he dips, he drops one last, chilling promise. Starting tomorrow, training goes from brutal to absolute hell, so they better lock in and save their tears. Washing off the grime, Kane pulls Lewis aside and spills some crazy lore. In the full 100 years this elite school has existed, there are almost zero records of a squad of rookies wiping the floor with senior elites. Lewis narrows his eyes, his mind scanning the academy's massive archives. He completely draws a blank on any crazy upsets like what just went down today. Kane leans in and whispers that this miracle has only happened exactly 3 times ever. And the wildest part, every single time a freshman class pulled it off, they ended up birthing a generation of unstoppable grandmasters. Lewis's eyes snap wide open. He instantly demands to know when this legendary upset. Kane smirks, revealing that the ultimate rookie takeover went down when their own fathers were walking these halls. Turns out, their dads were also absolute menaces who crushed the seniors on year one. Cut to the defeated upperclassmen, looking totally busted, bruised, and drenched in pure humiliation as they drag their broken egos back to the senior wing. One lackey desperately apologizes to Jess for choking in the arena, but stammers that Lewis and Neil are basically walking cheat codes. He nervously whispers that maybe they should jump those monsters in the shadows instead of a fair fight. Jess instantly bites his head off. A coward's game. Hell no. He craves the satisfaction of publicly crushing them to dust and stealing the undisputed king title, because in his arrogant mind, that throne. He snaps at his goon to chill out. The academy year is long, and they will get plenty of chances to serve up cold, hard revenge. Jess's ego refuses to crack. To him, it literally does not matter if Louis and Neil become living gods. They are still just filthy commoners in the grand empire. Only the elite nobles are the ones pulling the strings and truly controlling the destiny of the empire. Fast forward. Faye corners Miliana in the halls, probing her for thoughts on Lewis's insane combat style. She completely geeks out over his water magic, calling it next-level wizardry. Dropping a sly wink, Faye hints that if Miliana glues herself to Lewis's side and matches his grind, she could level up her own stats. Miliana stays totally silent, and the sheer jaw-dropping force behind his water magic. Deep down, she knows she could never mirror that kind of raw power. Even practicing right beside him, her own hydro abilities feel completely useless by comparison. Honestly, before Lewis showed up, nobody had ever weaponized water in such a crazy, unpredictable way. Watching him completely shifts Miliana's mindset. She realizes she desperately needs to invent some custom water-based strikes, moves that actually fit her combat style. Faye gently checks in, asking if burning herself out like this is truly worth it, especially when she is just 16 years old. Miliana softly whispers that she has to grind this hard for her family's survival. She just wants to make them proud. Faye sighs, having completely predicted that heartbreaking response. Without missing a beat, Faye waves Lewis over and announces that Miliana needs a quick word with him. Instantly, the whole group snaps their heads toward Miliana. Being put on the spot like that sends her anxiety straight through the roof. Half the class immediately jumps to conclusions, whispering that Miliana is about to drop a massive love confession right there. But romance is literally the furthest thing from her mind. As Louis strolls over, Faye casually points out his insane water skills from earlier. She asks if he could possibly mentor Miliana and pass on some of those killer techniques. Louis nods, completely unbothered. Being the genuinely wholesome guy he is, he shrugs and says it is zero hassle. In fact, since they are friends, he would be hyped to train her. But the second Miliana catches that word friends, her whole vibe shifts into pure panic. Lewis immediately catches her freezing up and tilts his head, totally lost. That is when Miliana softly murmurs that her life is a ticking time bomb, and when her mess finally catches up, she prays he will not regret tying himself to her. Lewis just locks eyes with her. He firmly promises he will never regret having her back, because he fiercely protects the people in his circle. Those words hit Miliana right in the chest, pushing her to the verge of tears. She stammers out that she refuses to drag him down with her into her chaotic reality before abruptly sprinting off. The rest of the crew just stands there, totally stunned by her exit. Faye curses under her breath and bolts after her, tossing a quick apology over her shoulder to Lewis as she goes, promising to make sure Miliana does not completely break down. Watching them vanish, Lewis stands in silence, realizing a hard truth. Everyone at this academy is secretly drowning in their own dark trauma. He gets that completely. But honestly, given his own track record, he has a gut feeling that he will be the one dragging Miliana into danger. He glances over at Kane and asks for the real scoop on her hidden past. Kane sighs and breaks it down, revealing that Miliana is the daughter of the Royce bloodline and the direct granddaughter of an absolute grandmaster. Back in the day when her grandma was running things, the Royce dynasty was basically untouchable, hoarding massive political power. But the second she passed away, the whole empire started crumbling into dust. Beyond that tragic downfall, Kane shrugs, admitting he is totally clueless about the recent drama. He points out that Faye probably holds all the missing puzzle pieces compared to him. Lewis then pivots to Kara, checking if she has any insider info on the situation. Kara drops a bombshell, explaining that the Royce family ended up in a massive turf war with the Arcanist Association. That detail instantly triggers Lewis's alarm bells. He presses harder, asking if Miliana's looming threat is tied to those Arcanist elites, and begging for any extra context. Sadly, Kara just sighs and shakes her head, confirming her intel stops there. Lewis exhales, realizing that to crack this mystery, he is going to have to confront Faye or Miliana face-to-face eventually. Flash forward to the next morning, the rookies pile into the Academy's first magic training arena. Towering at the front, the professor dramatically preaches that mana is a literal gift from the goddess and the heartbeat of the universe itself. He struts back and forth, declaring that in his class, he will hammer them into shape, teaching real mana control and lethal arcane martial arts. He sharply introduces himself as Mr. Sid. Out of nowhere, Kane spots Lewis clenching his jaw and asks why he looks so triggered. Because 5 minutes ago, Lewis was hyped out of his mind for this class. Lewis mutters that he is still locked in to learn, but his instincts are screaming at him. He can already tell this professor has major beef with him. And like clockwork, the second those words drop, Mr. Sid teleports right into Lewis's personal space. He glares down, hissing that pathetic students need to shut their mouths when the master is talking. He loudly proclaims his absolute disgust for loudmouth, disrespectful brats infesting his classroom. Without skipping a beat, he maliciously strips 1 credit straight from Lewis's record. Mr. Sid does not stop there, sneering that unlike certain meat-headed brain-dead losers, actual prodigies know how to fall in line and obey the Academy's strict codes. He warns that if Lewis keeps breaking the rules, he will bleed out his entire score until he hits 0 credits. A split second later, Mr. Sid cruelly slashes another credit from his file, branding Lewis as a toxic, vulgar punk, even though he barely breathed. Even though he's getting totally screwed over, Lewis bites his tongue. He doesn't drop a single insult, because he already knows Mr. Sid is dead set on making his life miserable. As the professor struts off, he throws some shade, telling Lewis to brush up on high society manners if he ever wants to be taken seriously. Then Sid flicks a finger. Boom. The ground shatters and a colossal sand knight violently bursts from the earth. Kane and Lewis are absolutely speechless, their eyes locked on the massive, towering beast. Sid breaks it down. Surviving a real fight means flawlessly blending raw physical combat with pure magic. To even call yourself an apprentice, you gotta mold your raw mana into a physical weapon. Nail that, and eventually you'll be able to wrap your entire body in indestructible magical armor. To show off, the professor channels his energy, forging a glowing mana blade right in his palm. He smirks, claiming that only after locking down these basics can someone truly become the secret, syncing your mind perfectly with your muscles, and channeling that fierce energy through razor-sharp, calculated movements. Sid casually twirls the glowing blade like it's before unloading a blindingly fast strike right at the colossal sand knight. The shockwave cleaves the beast cleanly in 2, leaving the entire class terrified by the insane destructive power. Dusting himself off, he announces that everyone is going to test their own attacks against solid stone targets, whoever shatters their statue the hardest. They are scoring 5 extra credits, but before the chaos kicks off, he needs to teach them the actual mechanics of a magical strike. Sid barks an order, splitting the class up by their elemental affinities. Neil, sitting pretty with his rare dual attributes, gets a free pass to stand solo. Meanwhile, the water users get totally sidelined. They're told to sit in the corner, practice defense, and act as glorified warm-up dummies. The courtyard quickly turns into a scramble as everyone finds their crew. Kane, Miliana, Faye, and Lewis immediately split off toward their designated zones. But it doesn't take long for the other cliques to start trashing Miliana. They point and snicker, brutally roasting the water users as nothing. Miliana's cheeks burn with humiliation. Once again, she's shoved into a pathetic background role. Watching the others flex their flashy offensive moves makes her blood boil with pure frustration. If this keeps up, she knows her dream of becoming a grandmaster is dead, spiraling in her own stress. She nervously whispers that she just wants to prove her worth to that specific person. Catching that slip-up, Louis instantly raises an eyebrow. Who exactly is she trying to impress? He bets it has major ties to the art. He straight up asks what's eating at her. But Miliana panics, waving him off and stammering that it's no big deal, and definitely none of his business. As Lewis shrugs and stretches out, he secretly wonders why she's so desperately hung up on dealing damage. The way he sees it, water magic has insanely overpowered utility compared to the other elements. Buffing your squad and completely ruining the enemy's rhythm wins fights. Hearing his logic, Miliana claps back, fiercely declaring that reaching Grandmaster status is the only way to drag her family's trashed legacy out of the mud. To pull that off, she refuses to be a one-trick pony. She needs lethal offense to match her ironclad defense. She absolutely refuses to believe the goddess would forge an element this fundamentally broken, meaning there has to be devastating water-based attacks hidden out there. Driven by that obsession, she's spent years grinding to perfect her aqua blade, relying on sketchy experimental potions to push her limit, while engineering brutal, rapid-fire combo attacks. But no matter how hard she grinds, she constantly hits a brick wall. The raw, bone-crushing impact just isn't there. A dark voice in her head starts whispering that water users really are doomed to be second-rate, Right as her thoughts spiral, some random guy strolls up, demanding she hit him with a defensive buff so he can go show off. Biting her lip, she manifests a shimmering water barrier around him. She's literally pushing herself to the breaking point, just so he can get some decent practice in, but this relentless barrage is totally draining her. You can actually see the heavy physical toll this back-to-back strain is taking on. Watching her struggle hits Lewis hard. It sparks a deep dive in his mind about water magic, and what it actually takes to reach Grandmaster status. This whole brutal setup violently yanks him back to his past life. Back then, people were absolutely merciless, constantly tearing him down over his physical limits. They treated him like an absolute joke for geeking out over martial arts, especially since he couldn't even walk straight and was constantly fighting through brutal asthma attacks. Haters bullied him relentlessly, calling him a pathetic loser for chasing a pipe dream. Worse yet, some scumbags even ripped off his hard-earned research. They'd spit in his face, telling him to stop glamorizing his failures. Some even had the nerve to tell him to just drop dead and end it all. But snapping back to reality and looking at Miliana Lewis sees it clearly. She knows exactly how weak she is right now, but she absolutely refuses to let her dream die. Giving off major Kane vibes, she keeps grinding forward, totally ignoring the haters trying to drag her down. Seeing that fire in her, Lewis makes a call. Maybe it's time he showed her a radically different way to fuse martial arts with water magic. Without warning, he steps up, instantly manifesting a massive ice shield. The sheer kinetic force of the blast launches that annoying kid flying backward. Dusting himself off, Lewis turns to Miliana. He looks her dead in the eye and says he genuinely believes water magic has insane potential. Since he's backing her up, he casually asks her to keep her eyes glued to what he's about to do next. Miliana gets super flustered, blushing crazy hard at how close Lewis is suddenly standing. Stuttering a bit, she nervously asks if he's actually being serious right now. Lewis just smirks, shouting over to Mr. Sid, asking if he can take a crack at one of those training dummies too. Mr. Sid, who already hates Lewis's guts, immediately snaps back with if he fails to even put a dent in that statue, he's going to nuke even more credits straight out of his account. Dripping with sarcasm, Sid asks if Lewis is really dumb enough to blow his precious ice magic on a target literally built like a tank. He flat out tells him to sit down and stick to baby steps like basic mana control instead. Unbothered, Lewis just chills there. He calmly announces he's actually cracked a cheat code to drastically boost water magic's attack damage. The second those words drop, the entire training ground explodes into mocking laughter. To them, the whole concept sounds like absolute garbage. Even Miliana gets anxious. She nervously whispers that these aren't just normal rocks, they're high-tier artifacts, forged from rare magic metals and heavily buffed with earth spells. According to her logic, basic water attacks wouldn't even leave a scratch. She's low-key terrified Lewis is about to tank his credit score for nothing. But Louis just flashes her a reassuring smile. He tells her to relax, because he already has a master plan queued up. Strutting calmly up to the massive knight statue, he simply scoops a handful of ordinary sand, locking his eyes on the target. He suddenly remembers an old proverb from his past world, that soft and fluid elements can eventually conquer the hardest obstacles. If he just fuses highly pressurized water with abrasive sand and launches it at supersonic speeds, the output becomes a literal water jet cutter, capable of slicing. With the theory locked in, Lewis doesn't hesitate for a single second. He immediately pulls the trigger on his idea. Mere seconds later, the seemingly indestructible knight statue is shards everywhere. Mr. Sid just stands there, absolutely paralyzed, staring at the pulverized ruins of his precious statue, like his brain's straight up short-circuited. Meanwhile, Lewis doesn't even flinch. He just shoots the teacher this ice-cold glare and drops the mic, saying that this is the raw, unfiltered. Later that night, Kane, Kara, and Lewis are strolling back to their dorms. And honestly, Kane is absolutely buzzing, totally hyping up that insane classroom flex. He nudges Lewis hyped out of his mind, saying he so wishes Lewis could have caught the sheer panic on Sid's face the second those massive credits rolled in. Bro, it was pure cinema. Kane laughs, swearing the dude looked absolutely devastated. It was like watching a guy trapped in a waking nightmare, the exact second Lewis unleashed that flawlessly. The guy's face drained of all color, looking sick to his stomach, like he just choked down actual garbage. And the moment the bell rang, he literally booked it out of that room like his life depended on it. Lewis just shrugs it off, totally unfazed. He admits he was way too locked in, totally obsessed with pushing the limits. Honestly, he didn't even spare a single glance to see the teacher spiraling. Because in his eyes, that dude's pathetic reaction wasn't even worth his time. Kane pivots fast, bringing the conversation right back to their magic training. heavily pushing that they really need to sleep on Faye's big idea. He spills that Miliana is out there grinding relentlessly, desperately trying to carve out a brand new path for her own survival. She is literally burning through her cash, chugging insanely overpriced mental recovery potions, just to keep her grueling training going. Word on the street is she is even planning to rent out exclusive private rooms the second she's off the clock, just so she can. Kane points out a huge win-win here. Teaming up with her could actually be a massive boost for Lewis's own endgame too. Out of nowhere, Hera slides into the chat, dropping cold hard facts. Renting just one training room burns through 30 silver coins, easily. And those mental recovery potions. Try a jaw-dropping 300 gold. Hearing those insane numbers hits Lewis like a truck. That price tag is way more brutal than he ever calculated. He pauses, gears turning in his head. Then he locks eyes with Kara and asks for a huge solid regarding their upcoming combat mission. The exact same brutal field test they are forced to dive into in just a few days. The squad keeps throwing theories back and forth, mentally prepping for the chaos ahead as they finally crash at the dorms. Fast forward to the next morning. The instructor rounds up the whole squad out on the massive academy courtyard. He drops this grand motivational speech, hyping up how their bodies are literally leveling up and sharpening with every single sunset. He claims that watching their crazy glow up genuinely fills him with this intense, overwhelming sense of pride. And because they are looking so sharp, he officially drops the bomb. They are finally cleared to jump into the Academy's real-deal, high-stakes combat missions. He preaches that these drops aren't just some boring school chore, but crucial life-or-death chances to massively rank up their skills. He breaks down the geography, explaining that Candria Arcanist Academy is directly linked to the Mondo Great Forest, stretching all the way across the deadly western frontier. Back in the Dark Ages, those woods were an absolute death zone, totally overrun by nightmare fuel monsters. But as the centuries passed, it morphed into this massive wild border that basically keeps several huge empires from tearing. Make no mistake, though a limitless swarm of beasts still lurks in those shadows, and the deeper you dare to venture into the core, the more insanely overpowered those freaks get. On the flip side, the trash mobs clinging to the very edge of the woods are way more manageable. The whole reason this massive academy was even built was to act as an iron shield protecting the Empire from whatever horrors crawl out of that tree line. Which is exactly why students get thrown to the wolves on the regular, ordered to wipe out the low-level threats prowling. The instructor hypes them up, revealing that every single magic crystal ripped from a dead monster can be cashed in for massive Academy credits and rare loot once they make it back alive. And to sweeten the deal, whoever hauls back the absolute biggest mountain of crystals scores a totally exclusive secret bonus drop. But his tone goes dead serious as he drops a massive warning. Playing hero out there will get you wrecked. If anyone arrogantly picks a fight with an overpowered beast and needs a teacher to swoop in and save their life, boom. A brutal 1-credit penalty instantly slapped on their record. With the ground rules finally set, the instructor waves them off, ordering everyone to gear up and get ready for the drop. Neil is practically vibrating with hype. In his head, this is the ultimate green light to finally snap and go absolutely feral in a real bloody fight. Meanwhile, Faye pulls Louis aside, straight up asking if he seriously plans on throwing Miliana into a live battlefield, just to train her. Louis doesn't bat an eye, calmly firing back that a bloody life or death struggle exposes a person's raw potential way better than some safe padded sparring match ever could. Hearing his rock-solid logic, the crew doesn't hesitate. They instantly lock in, forming an unstoppable 5-person squad. I honestly believe that stacking their unique abilities and moving as one perfectly synchronized unit will make them dangerously lethal, which is a billion times smarter than burning mountains of cash just to sweat in some The squad immediately pivots to Miliana, waiting to see if she is actually down for this wild idea. Plot twist: Miliana is genuinely hyped to roll with them. Right on cue, the instructor claps his hands, demanding everyone's attention, and drops the details for their first ever field run. Every 5-man rookie squad is getting paired up with veteran upperclassmen. He pitches it as the ultimate mentoring setup, claiming it is a golden chance for the newbies to soak up real-world combat wisdom, while basically having high-level bodyguards to keep them from getting flat-out wrecked on day one. But the good vibes do not last. Lewis catches Jess glaring daggers at him from across the courtyard. Jess struts over, dripping with toxic energy, and mocks their little coincidental reunion right before the drop. He leans in, making sure Lewis knows these field runs are absolute death traps, and hits him with pure sarcasm, warning him to try really hard not to end up as Monster Chow out in the wild. Lewis does not even flinch. He just coldly fires back. That pissed off Jess violently clicks his tongue and storms off, muttering under his breath about Lewis being a completely arrogant punk. But Jess is already scheming. He secretly whispers to his upperclassman buddy that if things go sideways during the op, the seniors should just sit back and let the rookies get completely wrecked. Meanwhile, Kane pulls Lewis aside to drop a harsh reality check, explaining that the instructors only spectate from the shadows. They refuse to lift a single finger unless a student is literally worse. Kane suspects these toxic upperclassmen might deliberately bait the newbies way past the safe zone, pushing them straight into nightmare territory, just to watch them suffer. But Louis just smirks. To him, high-tier beasts just equal massive loot drops. We are talking premium magic crystal. Fast forward a bit, and the squads finally breach the heavy tree line. As the dense shadows swallow them whole, Lewis interrogates Kane about the zone's lore, wondering if any legendary ancient horrors are still lurking out there in the deep woods. Kane shuts that down, explaining that the region's holy saints basically nuked all those apocalyptic behemoths ages ago. So logically, the outer perimeter should be completely cleared out of anything totally insane. If they hit the jackpot, they might clash with a couple of fighter-tier beasts, but that is literally it. Stalking nearby their assigned senior chaperone, eavesdrops on the chatter, and practically chokes on his own smug laughter. Fighter-tier threats are absolute nightmares. They usually take a whole raid team of hardened pros just to barely scrape by. Hearing a bunch of fresh meat act like they could actually solo one is the most delusional thing he has ever heard. Out of nowhere, the ground violently trembles, and a colossal beast crashes right into their path. The senior literally drops his jaw in pure shock, because blocking their way is a full-blown fighter-tier grand. Does the upperclassman jump in to save his squad, camouflaging himself deep in the canopy? He smirks, thinking the universe just handed him the absolute perfect setup, since a boss of this massive magnitude will absolutely slaughter these clueless rookies in seconds. Chilling in his safe sniper nest, he kicks back, totally ready to watch the epic bloodbath play out from above. Lewis clocks the betrayal instantly, and his blood just absolutely boils. Up in the branches, the senior is still sweating over the bear's insane stats. The beast has god-tier stamina, and armor as thick as a literal tank. He knows these kids are seconds away from tasting the most savage, terrifying beatdown of their entire lives. But Louis does not even panic. He violently barks orders, snapping the squad into battle formation. The bear unleashes an ear-shattering roar, but instead of running, the entire 5-man unit readies their weapons and instantly Faye completely blitzes in, first thrusting her spear, while Kane flanks the blind spot, unleashing his brand new martial arts combo. But the second Kane's strike connects, the shockwave rattles his bones. The monster's hide is literally like punching reinforced concrete. The bear violently swings back, and Kane not missing a beat, Faye violently re-engages the front line, drawing aggro so Kara can launch a brutal blindside attack. Hanging back for a split second, Lewis watches the flawless teamwork unfold, a massive, satisfied grin spreading across his face. He is beyond hyped to see his crew syncing up perfectly in a genuine life-or-death battle. But their relentless damage eventually pisses the bear off, shifting its murderous gaze straight onto Louis and Miliana. Without flinching, Miliana instantly casts her hydro magic, whipping up rapid torrents of water, then, flawlessly blending her elemental control, with a brutal martial arts throw, she literally launches the multi-ton monster, flying straight through the air. It connects with the force of a wrecking ball. Lewis just stands there, his jaw practically on the floor, completely blown away. He has never witnessed a flex like that. Faye instantly chimes in, hyping up the fact that this insane move is actually Miliana's very own brainchild. It is a flawless hybrid, seamlessly blending fluid water magic with hardcore jujitsu mechanics. Hearing this genuinely hypes Lewis up. He is absolutely thrilled watching her step out of her comfort zone to forge her own signature fighting style. Refusing to let Miliana steal the entire spotlight, it is his turn to show off. He pivots and unleashes a bone-crushing roundhouse kick, burying his heel dead into the monster's chest right over its heart. The impact launches the massive beast, skidding backward through the dirt. Without missing a single beat, Lewis summons a highly pressurized and blasts it straight at the grizzly. The orb detonates with a deafening shockwave the second it makes contact, slamming the colossal monster hard into the earth. Miliana is left completely speechless, staring wide-eyed at the absolute devastation Lewis just unleashed. Even top-tier students packing heavy-hitting elemental magic can barely leave a scratch on a grand bear. Yet here is Lewis absolutely shredding it apart using nothing but basic water magic. Brushing off the dust, Louis casually drops a truth bomb. He explains that it all boils down to basic science. By superheating and compressing the water, then detonating it under extreme pressure, the resulting steam blast is intense enough to literally cook a target from the inside out. It does not matter how thick a monster's armor is. Once you bypass the outer shell, internal organs just cannot tank that kind of catastrophic damage. Miliana is soaking up every single syllable, hanging on to his words like he is delivering the ultimate masterclass. Her mind is already racing, quietly plotting how she can weave these next-level mechanics into her own combat arsenal. Right after the dust settles, Lewis catches her off guard by tossing her an exclusive, custom-forged magic ring from the Candace Trading Company. It is a rare piece. He pulled some serious strings with Kara to get his hands on. Slipping this baby on gives Miliana temporary access to earth, fire, and wind magic, stacking perfectly on top of her innate water powers, putting her on the exact same multi-elemental wavelength as Lewis. He actually cooked up this big-brain strategy after clocking the heavy, iced-out collection of rings Mr. Sid always flexes during lectures. That subtle detail gave him the green light to start experimenting, finding ways to chain different elemental attributes together. Riding that wave of inspiration, he went out of his way to get a custom ring forged specifically for Miliana. A warm blush creeps onto Miliana's face, genuinely touched by the incredibly sweet gesture. But the literal second she slides the ring onto her finger, boom, a blazing inferno shoots straight for her head. "Move!" Lewis screams at the top of his lungs. By some sheer miracle, Miliana catches the blazing reflection in the corner of her eye, diving out of the way just a microsecond before being incinerated alive. Panting in the dirt, she stares blankly at the scorched earth where she just stood. A cold sweat drops down her neck as she realizes the absolutely lethal payload behind that strike. The entire squad whips their heads around, locking their eyes on the pitch-black tree line. Crouched deep in the foliage, the lurking upperclassman is literally short-circuiting. He cannot even begin to process the absolute madness unfolding before his eyes. A heavyweight fighter-class Grand Bear was just completely vaporized by that blinding blast. It is like the beast was simply deleted from existence, but there is zero time to celebrate. Lewis and his crew suddenly feel the ground trembling beneath their boots, sensing something absolutely monstrous pushing through the dense woods. Massive ancient trees start violently shaking and snapping like twigs, buckling under the crushing weight of whatever nightmare is stomping toward them. A heartbeat later, colossal silhouettes tear out from the darkness of the canopy. Blaze Kongs. These hulking demonic apes are literally dripping in magma, fueled by nothing but blind primal rage and absolute insanity. Kane breaks out in a cold sweat, muttering that things just went from 0 to 100 in the worst way possible. Lewis snaps his head over urgently, demanding to know what they are actually dealing with. Kane's voice shakes as he drops the grim reality. These lethal alpha predators, spotting even a single Blaze Kong in this zone, would trigger a massive red alert. But seeing an entire, fully grown pack crashing the party, that is straight up apocalyptic. Before anyone can even blink, the monstrous apes dive onto the shredded remains of the Grand Bear, viciously tearing it apart and feasting right in front of the stunned crew. The sickening crunch of bones and tearing flesh instantly turns. The rest of the squad turns pale as ghosts desperately fighting back the urge to empty their stomachs at the horrific gore fest. Then the horrifying realization hits them like a truck. If these beasts are roaming here, the other squads pushing deeper into the woods are walking straight into a death trap, and their gut feeling is terrifyingly spot on. All across the trial grounds, groups of clueless students are suddenly coming face to face with the raging apes. Absolutely nobody in the freshman class has the stats or the firepower to survive a clash with monsters of this insane caliber. Pure panic erupts through the forest. Kids are scrambling, screaming that they need to SOS the instructor, but the proctors stationed around the perimeter are completely clueless. Their monitors are flashing red as student casualties start spiking off the charts out of nowhere. The faculty is caught totally blindsided, frantically trying to figure out what on earth is ripping their exam apart. Yet right in the dead center of this apocalyptic chaos, there is one absolute madman standing tall. Not a single drop of fear in his eyes as he squares up directly in front of a towering Blaze Kong. That absolute savage is Neil. A manic laugh rips from his throat. He locks eyes with the beast, flashing a feral grin. "You seriously want to go toe-to-toe with me?" Zero hesitation. Pure adrenaline lights up his face as he cracks his knuckles, practically vibrating with hype. Meanwhile, total chaos erupts around them. The rest of the students are scrambling for but Lewis stays frosty, analyzing the red flags. Wait a minute. Beasts like this are literally banned from the academy grounds. This isn't just some random spawn. Someone, or something, is pulling the strings from the shadows, and it's about to get incredibly messy. Cut to an upperclassman cowering up in the branches. His blood runs cold. One of the Blaze Kongs just locked onto his location. Panic spikes. He frantically coats his body in a thick layer of rock armor, but he's still shaking like a leaf. Too late. The ape closes the distance and drops a devastating haymaker, straight up obliterating his defenses and nearly snapping his spine in half. The beast raises its massive foot for the execution. Boom. Out of nowhere, Lewis materializes, delivering a brutal flying kick right to the monster's jaw. The colossal beast goes skidding backward through the dirt. Lewis doesn't even blink, snapping at Kara and Miliana to grab the busted senior and bounce. They don't argue, but as they drag the guy away, they're practically screaming at Lewis to fall back with them. Lewis just waves them off. "Chill out," he yells back. "I'll be right behind you." Getting clapped in the face doesn't sit right with the Blaze Kong. The humiliation morphs into pure, unfiltered rage. It loses its absolute mind, unhinging its jaw to blast a nuke-sized fireball straight at the retreating squad. "Hit the deck!" Lewis roars, warning everyone to scatter before impact. The shockwave of the inferno is insane. The scorching heat nearly roasts Miliana and Kara alive, as they barely dive out of the kill. Faye's eyes widen as the realization hits. These apes aren't just lashing out blindly, they are specifically hunting to kill. Kane grips his weapon, reality sinking in. Running is off the table. It's channeling gale force winds around his boots. Kane blasts forward. He blurs into a streak of light, slicing his dagger viciously across the Titan's flesh. It's basically a paper cut against that thick hide. But hey, first blood is still first blood. Faye doesn't miss a beat. She lunges in from the flank, driving her spear deep into the monster's massive bicep. With a brutal follow-up sweep, she actually forces the beast to its knees. Kane is literally speechless at her insane, raw power. No mercy. Faye channels her ultimate move, her aura exploding as she drops her signature art, Crescent Fall. A savage, tornado-like shockwave drills straight into the ape's chest cavity. The dust settles, and it looks like a confirmed kill. But then, those glowing, demonic eyes snap wide open again. Faye's blood runs cold. The freakish beast had literally crystallized its own organs right before impact to tank the lethal blow. Refusing to back down, she completely sends it, violently, plunging her sacred weapon all the way through its torso and triggering a massive, earth-shattering shockwave. Catching her breath over the smoking carcass, a smirk of absolute triumph creeps onto her face. Boss down. But the victory lap gets cut brutally short. Kane screeches at the top of his lungs, "Watch your six!" Faye whips around only to find the nightmare looming right over her. It's still standing, shrugging off fatal wounds like they're absolutely nothing. The beast unhinges its jaws, unleashing a blinding torrent of hellfire right at her face. But a split second before she melts, Lewis heavily drops in as her human shield. He summons a glacial barricade to tank the flames. Without missing a beat, he stomps the ground, erupting a forest of jagged ice spikes from the earth. The gigantic ape gets completely entombed in a frozen prison. The squad finally gets a split second to just inhale some oxygen. Gasping Faye throws Louis a quick thanks, her brain short-circuiting over how that monster is still breathing, with a literal hole in its heart. Lewis zones her out completely. His eyes are deadlocked on the frozen beast, every instinct screaming at him. He spots the red-hot glow building up in its throat. "Move!" he yells, violently yanking Faye out of the splash zone. Boom! The ape shatters its icy coffin into a million pieces. And then their jaws drop. Every single gash Faye and Kane left on it starts stitching together in real time. Everyone is utterly paralyzed. Sure, the textbooks say Blaze Kongs are top-tier aggressive predators, but absolutely nobody mentioned this broken cheat code level healing factor. Watching the flesh knit back together, Lewis gets extreme déjà vu. This psycho behavior. It perfectly matches Neil. It's a literal masochist. Taking damage and bleeding out is exactly what supercharges this freakish thing. Deep in another sector, their instructor is totally sweating, currently juggling a whole squad of these apes, and his patience is flatlining. Every lethal strike he lands just buffs their stats as they heal back up. The horror clicks something is deeply, terrifyingly wrong with their biology. If this broken regeneration keeps up, every single student wandering this forest is going to be straight up massacred. Cut back to the main fight. Lewis feels the absolute dread settling in, realizing just how doomed they are, because more and more, a pack of Blaze Kongs closes in, trapping the crew in a suffocating ring of fire. Meanwhile, Miliana and Kara fight like hell to hold the line, but they're taking heavy hits as the brutal assault wears them down. Off to the side, that battered upperclassman finally snaps awake, but there's zero panic in his eyes, just a twisted smirk creeping across his face, knowing this bloodbath is playing out exactly how he scripted it. As far as he's concerned, his job here is done. All that's left is to sit back and watch these glitched-out beasts wipe Lewis and the rest of the commoners off the map. Boom, the sickening reality finally. This whole nightmare survival game, it was an inside job, orchestrated by the senior from day one. Back on the front line, the Blaze Kongs boxing Lewis in go completely berserk. Kane's jaw practically drops as he spots the monsters popping martial arcane armor flexing technique, like literal trained assassins. The horde lunges again, forcing Lewis into a frantic, nerve-shredding defense. But in the middle of the blood-pumping chaos, a chilling thought hits him. These apes aren't just swinging wild, they are hard-focusing him. Out of nowhere, one of the beasts charges up a colossal sphere of flames, practically the size of a miniature sun, and locks it dead onto Lewis. Right on cue, the rest of the pack summons their own massive infernos, turning the battlefield into a blinding firing squad. Faye and Kane sprint toward their boy, throwing themselves into the crossfire to tank the incoming heat. Then, boom. A catastrophic explosion rips through the forest, radiating a shockwave so heavy it feels like a literal nuke just dropped. Kicking back and watching the mushroom cloud rise, the senior grins from ear to ear, totally convinced his hit job is a wrap. But honestly, our guy Lewis doesn't fold that easily. Dead center of the scorching crater. Blinding streaks of azure light slash right through the smoke and fire. Even the raging Kongs freeze up in pure confusion, staring dumbfounded at the glowing aura cutting through the ash. A split second later, a savage cyclone tears into the sky, swallowing the raging wildfire whole. Faye and Kane instantly clock that signature blue glow. It hits them both. Lewis just tanked one of the most lethal wipeout combos ever thrown at a bunch of first years. And he didn't just survive. He's stepping out of the rubble, radiating a pressure far more menacing than before. Faye stammers out in absolute shock, realizing that bending mana across a zone this huge, by pure willpower alone, is god-tier stuff, something strictly reserved for grandmasters, or even higher ranks. The crazy truth finally dawns on her. Lewis has been masking his insanely overpowered stats this entire time. On the flip side, Lewis can feel his muscles literally screaming. By redlining his internal mana flow, he's essentially hacking his own biology to mimic master-level energy control. But the sheer agony ripping through his veins is reaching a boiling point, and he knows his body is going to crash hard any second now. With the clock ticking, he knows he has to end this boss fight immediately. Flipping the switch, he syncs his breathing rhythm with his frost arts, and pulls a colossal tidal wave right out of thin air. The crushing flood washes over the battlefield, swallowing the Blaze Kongs and sending the pack into total drowning panic. Before they can even paddle, the surge flash freezes into thousands of razor-sharp ice blades. Lewis takes a single step, and the glacial terrain lets him skate forward at mind-bending velocity. He rockets toward one of the massive apes, delivering a devastating smash that launches the beast spiraling into the sky like a rag doll. Another Kong lunges to blindside him, but Lewis casually brushes off the strike, using his Axiom Overdrive, before snapping back with a brutal double counter against two different targets. His movement speed hits such a glitchy tier that the monsters can't even process his afterimages. One frame he's right in their blind spot, and the next he vanishes, dropping massive damage from a completely new angle. But Louis isn't just spamming combos in the dark. With every dash across the ice, he's secretly carving out a massive 8-trigram magic circle right under their feet. Boom! He perfectly maneuvers every single Blaze Kong onto a node of the formation, trapping them in the crosshairs. Tapping into his frost element, Louis instantly chain freezes the entire pack to the floor, launching himself way up into the sky. He rains down an absolute storm of palm strikes, hammering the immobilized beasts deep into the frozen core of the spell. The crushing glacier seals over them instantly, guaranteeing. As the colossal icy fortress finally locks into place, Louis touches down on the scorched earth, silently, admiring his own chilling masterpiece. Without warning, deafening cracks echo as spiderweb fractures violently rip across the towering glacier. A heartbeat later, the entire monument violently detonates, and every single Blaze Kong frozen inside shatters into a million shimmering pieces. Lurking in the shadows miles away, the disguised upperclassman seethes with absolute fury, finally accepting the bitter reality of his massive failure. Against all completely insane odds, Louis clutched up and survived the bloodbath yet again. Back on the front lines, Kane and Faye just stand there, completely paralyzed in awe, having just watched their friend wipe out an entire horde of apex predators in the blink of an eye. With the chaotic slaughter finally over, Louis picks up on a seriously bizarre. The raw wind and water mana swirling around him suddenly feel perfectly synchronized with his own heartbeat. It feels like the primal elements themselves are practically begging to bend entirely to his will. The second he regroups with the squad, Kane instantly hypes him up, completely mind-blown that a basic ice build could unleash such terrifying destruction. But Faye aggressively cuts their little bromance short. She snaps at them to stop acting like clueless fanboys. Louis nods, knowing she is absolutely right, realizing this is their golden window to fall back, since the Academy's elite instructors are finally crashing the party. Off in the distance, the shadowy senior watches the heavy hitters rolling in, instantly knowing his twisted assassination plot is complete. In a desperate split-second decision, the traitor violently slams his own fist straight into his chest. He hits himself hard enough to practically shatter his own ribs, immediately collapsing into the dirt to play the role of a helpless, brutally beaten victim. Moments later, the legendary principal himself touches down on the chaotic battlefield. He barks out a strict command to the staff: prioritize shielding the wounded students while ruthlessly purging the remaining beasts. The squad is absolutely shook, unable to process the fact that the headmaster personally stepped onto the brutal front lines. The principal marches straight up to Louis's crew, urgently demanding to know if anyone took fatal damage. Kane frantically explains that Louis literally carried them through the slaughter, while Faye chimes in, revealing that their friend just soloed multiple master-tier Blaze Kongs. She emphasizes that he pulled this off with absolutely zero backup, bluntly admitting they would all be dead meat without him. That massive revelation leaves even the hardened principal totally dumbfounded, because slaughtering monsters of that caliber solo is a virtually impossible. But Louis cuts the praise short, warning him that this entire monster outbreak feels incredibly sketchy. He then hands over a jagged, blood-stained chunk of ice, containing the grotesque remains of a mutated ape. The principal's eyes instantly narrow as he inspects the dark evidence, ordering the kids to evacuate back to base, while he personally handles the twisted cover-up. Fast forward a bit, and Louis hits up the bustling campus trading hub, stepping into a dimly lit supply shop. The shop owner is mind-blown, telling him that after surviving that hellish mission, he racked up an absolutely massive bag of points and academy credits. But she gives him a deeply concerned look, totally baffled as to why a loaded student is bulk buying. She urgently warns him that chugging too many of those heavy elixirs could completely fry his nervous system and permanently wreck his body. Louis just flashes a chillingly calm smile, brushing it off by saying, before he can even bag his loot, Kylie suddenly pops out of nowhere, asking to pull him aside for a highly classified chat. She reveals that elite forensic teams ripped apart the mutant corpses recovered from the bloody battlefield, and what they found was horrifying: literal traces of dark alchemy, forbidden combat stims, and sick genetic tampering wired deep inside the beasts. That disturbing evidence proves Louis's gut feeling was dead on, Some twisted mastermind was pulling the strings behind this massacre from the very start. Kylie whispers that the headmaster is completely convinced a rival political syndicate orchestrated the whole bloodbath. According to her dark intel, shadowy factions are getting extremely restless because both His Majesty and Lady Million are finally reaching the end of their prime. And with 0 official heirs locked in the bloody race for the royal throne, is still completely wide open. Because of that massive power vacuum, kidnapping or straight-up assassinating the elite kids tied to major nobles has become a ruthless. Since this very academy has an absolute chokehold on the Northern Empire's future, whoever dictates its survival basically wins the entire shadowy war. Louis can barely wrap his head around the fact that so much innocent blood was spilled over a petty, vicious fight for the crown. Even so, he can't shake off the chilling reality. Those mutated apes were dead set on hunting him down during the chaos. Kylie looks him dead in the eyes, swearing to personally hunt down the masterminds and watch his back every step of the way. Right before stepping into the shadows, she drops a heavy warning he needs to aggressively level up his power right now, because the headmaster is clearly betting everything on his potential. After she finally walks away, eyes locked on the glowing vial in his grip, Louis swallows a bitter pill of reality. He absolutely has to level up his power. 0 hesitation. He tips his head back and downs the strange liquid in a single desperate shot. A quiet whisper escapes his lips, affirming that this brutal grind is exactly his mind immediately drifts to his crew, picturing the massive targets currently painted on all their backs. Meanwhile, deep in the shadows, the upperclassman who orchestrated the recent ambush delivers a debrief to his. He breaks down the data confirming their twisted little experiment actually triggered a massive spike in combat stats within the blast zone. But honestly, the final numbers are completely underwhelming. Even though most of those engineered freaks practically vaporized upon dying, the Academy still managed to scrape up a few leftover carcasses. If the headmaster manages to connect the dots, their entire shadow operation is completely toast. Yet the puppet master pulling the strings doesn't even flinch. He casually points out that these lab rats were imported straight from the Boughton Empire. Brushing that aside, the mastermind glares at a candid snapshot of Louis practically burning a hole through it, as he questions the true origins of this random kid. The senior chimes in, confessing that Louis has been setting off major red flags for a while now. According to him, the suffocating pitch-black aura oozing off the boy is downright unmistakable, and he is dead set on the theory that the headmaster is actively covering up the real identity of this wild card. Whatever the actual truth might be, father and son are in total agreement. Louis is the crime boss coldly tosses the photograph into the flames, ordering his boy to wipe this nuisance off the board immediately. The upperclassman brands Louis as a literal cursed child. He drops a heavy warning. If this kid keeps snooping around their ultimate weapon, their entire master plan will shatter into a million pieces. Taking that in, the Duke commands his son to leak all their gathered intel straight up the food chain. He wants the files hand-delivered to the absolute top brass of the Arcanist Association. In his mind, those paranoid elites will absolutely feast on these juicy rumors about a mythical cursed child. The moment the Association catches wind of this monster hiding inside the Academy walls, they will trigger a full-blown merciless witch hunt. It is classic dark psychology. The enemy of his enemy is basically the perfect attack dog. And the mastermind orchestrating this entire nightmare, none other than Prince Vaughn himself. He is the untouchable Duke, running the noble faction, and yeah, he is also the father of Brian. Smash cut to later, we see Louis strolling straight into the combat arena. He drops into a deep meditative trance, totally zoning out. Yet even with his eyes glued shut, his radar is dialed in on every single molecule shifting around him. Out of absolutely nowhere, Kane launches a vicious blindside strike, betting everything on a sneaky stealth takedown. But Louis tracks the killing intent, instantly deflecting the heavy blow like it is absolutely nothing. He doesn't just casually parry the blade. He seamlessly weaves through Kane's frantic combo and fires back with some devastating counterattacks of his own. Right in the thick of the brawl, a massive shockwave of killer energy violently enters the legendary Faye. And knowing her, the concept of holding back simply does not exist in her dictionary. Whether it is a friendly sparring match or a life-or-death duel, she always dives headfirst into the bloodbath with absolute, unhinged ferocity. Still cool as ice, Louis snaps into action the exact millisecond her weapon enters his striking zone. With a flick of his wrist, a jagged wall of frost materializes out of thin air, completely neutralizing her explosive momentum. The rest of the squad watches from the sidelines, totally hyped up and convinced they finally backed him into a corner for a game-ending hit. They actually think they outsmarted him this time. But Miliana instantly reads the room, realizing with a chill that Lewis already decoded their entire master plan. And honestly, she is dead on. As the thick smoke clears, Lewis casually strolls out of the crater, clapping his hands to hype up his crew. Instead of tearing apart their flaws, he gives massive props to Kane, praising his insanely upgraded speed and razor-sharp reflexes. He practically hands him a gold medal for flawlessly executing those sneaky, hit-and-run tactics they have been grinding on. Next, he shifts his focus to Faye, totally fanboying over how she dangerously boosted her spear thrusts by mixing in her raw hand-to-hand combat mechanics. But the biggest shout-out goes to Miliana. He heavily praises her 200 IQ move of burying Kara's magical relic deep inside the mud to set up a blind trap. Flashing a rare, genuine smile, Lewis admits he is beyond stoked to see his entire squad leveling up this fast in such an insanely tight time frame. He even drops his ego, straight up confessing that if his icy sixth sense hadn't picked up on the hidden glitch in their trap, that highly coordinated ambush would have legitimately put him in the dirt. Kane isn't buying the hype. His face is practically carved out of stone, radiating pure frustration despite the compliments flying around. Why? Because the harsh reality just hit him. Even with their entire squad jumping Lewis at once, they still couldn't lay a single finger on him. He fiercely gestures at Lewis, pointing out how the dude just styled on their ultimate combo without catching a single scratch. To Kane, it's a brutal wake-up. Faye on the flip side is totally mesmerized. She's obsessed with Lewis's insane radar ability, that wild, predictive reflex he casually calls. Her eyes light up as she admits she has absolutely never encountered. Lewis just shrugs, breaking it down. He explains that the trick is literally syncing up his mental focus with his mana flow in perfect harmony. He humbly adds that it's still a massive work in progress, and he's tweaking the mechanics every single day. But he gives her a reassuring smile. He will personally coach her on how to unlock it during their upcoming training arcs. While everyone is busy chatting, Miliana quietly slides Lewis a fresh recovery potion. Out of nowhere, Faye throws a wicked sucker punch straight at his blind spot. But surprise, surprise, she completely whiffs it, hitting absolutely nothing but air. Miliana watches this impossible reflex and shakes her head. She murmurs that sometimes Lewis feels straight up glitchy, like an anomaly who doesn't even belong in this dimension. Boom. That comment hits way too close to home. Lewis violently chokes, almost spraying his potion everywhere in sheer panic. Sweat instantly drips down his forehead. His voice cracks a little as he frantically asks where the heck she got a wild idea like that. Wiping the glowing liquid off his chin, he listens as Miliana softly clarifies. She points out how wildly generous he is, casually dropping top-tier combat secrets like it's nothing. In their brutal society, elites hoard that kind of power behind locked doors. Teaching a sacred... That is exactly why she playfully teases him, joking that his whole mindset feels like it was imported straight from a past life. Hearing that terrifyingly accurate joke, Lewis lets out an awkward breath and nervously rubs the back of his neck. He forces out a dry chuckle covering his tracks. He insists it's probably just his street kid roots, talking totally disconnected from those stuck-up noble traditions. Besides, he gestures to the squad, pointing out that every single one of them is constant. For him, the ultimate goal is simple. He wants their entire crew to grind, evolve, and dominate as one unstoppable unit. Eventually, Faye claps her hands, signaling that the grind session is over. She reminds the squad they still have a grueling martial arts lecture lined up for tomorrow morning. But right before she dips, she shoots a glaring side-eye at Kane and Lewis, strictly warning the duo not to sneak out and start any late-night chaos. Kane instantly fires back with a sarcastic roast, and just like that, the whole gang strolls out of the arena, trading jokes and laughing it off. But as the laughter fades, Lewis anchors himself to the spot, remaining completely isolated in the empty training yard. Peering down into his duffel bag, a heavy sigh escapes his lips. His stash of recovery potions is critically low. Again. He's definitely going to have to burn some credits to restock tomorrow. But the second he pops the cork to down another vial, Kylie materializes out of the shadows, aggressively gripping his wrist. Her eyes lock onto him sharply, demanding to know what the hell he thinks he's doing. She literally just watched him chug a heavy-duty mental stimulant 24 hours. Her voice drips with fierce frustration. If he keeps spamming those toxic enhancers, his neurons are going to literally fry themselves into absolute mush. Her harsh warning strikes a deep nerve. Lewis freezes the crushing weight of his invisible burdens, flashing vividly across his mind. The echoed memory of his mother echoes in his ears the unbreakable vow he made to shatter his limits and ascend to the legendary rank of Grand Master. That title is his only ticket. It's the only way to rip the orphanage out of the greedy association's claws, forging a shield strong. And now, with shadowy elites painting a massive target on his back, the desperation hits overdrive. He has to mutate into an absolute beast, no matter the deadly cost. His grip tightens on the glass vial. He quietly but firmly tells Kylie to back off, insisting he knows his exact limits and won't crash. Behind those determined eyes, he knows the truth. These toxic brews are his only cheat code to literally double his grueling daily grind. Unlike those privileged academy snobs, he doesn't have the luxury of taking baby steps. Kylie's piercing gaze darkens as she asks, is he really willing to gamble his life on that? But the exact second the liquid hits his system, a massive shockwave ripples through the air. Kylie violently flinches, her armor clinking as her body locks up. Her instincts scream danger. A wildly suffocating god-tier aura is violently erupting straight from Lewis's core. Lewis just tilts his head, totally oblivious to the pressure. He awkwardly asks if he just triggered some kind of weird side effect, because internally, his mana circuits are practically singing. The magical energy is surging through his veins with a terrifyingly flawless liquid smoothness. Kylie opens her mouth, but the words totally fail her. Even her veteran combat instincts cannot compute the monster. She tries to gasp out a warning, but then her eyes drop to the ground. Hidden in the dirt is a massive graveyard of empty glowing potion vials. Boom. The shock instantly morphs into pure, unadulterated rage. Her jaw drops as she realizes this absolute maniac. Caught red-handed, Lewis flashes a highly guilty, awkward grin. Meanwhile, Kylie practically erupts, aggressively shouting that she literally checked the Academy's purchase log. She checks the logs, and her jaw drops. This dude just cashed in for his 8th batch of juice this month. Do the math, and he is straight up chugging at least 2 of these heavy-duty elixirs every single day. Lewis claps back, totally unfazed. If he wants to hit Grandmaster status on speedrun mode, plus he shrugs, his body feels perfectly fine. 0 glitches, 0 red flags. Kylie is having absolutely none of it. She shuts that logic down, reminding him that reaching the top tier is not some cheap hack you can just buy. What he actually needs is to put in the grueling hours and build his base stats the hard way, instead of spamming sketchy boosters to forcefully break his level cap. She drops a harsh reality check. Sure, he feels invincible right now, but those toxins are quietly melting his core. Soon enough, his organs will be literal soup. Not taking no for an answer, she snatches his wrist. Before he pops another vial, they are doing a full-blown aura and magic scan. She needs to see exactly how cooked his internal system actually is. Fast forward a bit, and Kylie marches him straight into the lab for a deep dive blood test. Louis offers up his arm, letting his crimson drops mix into a glowing diagnostic fluid. Sitting across from them, the headmaster himself squints at the reaction. The old man analyzes the swirling liquid, his brows knitting together. There is absolutely 0 brain rot. The heavy potion residue has not touched his mind at all. Wildly enough, it is a massive buff. His neural pathways are firing off like crazy. He is sharper and way more dialed in. Hearing this absolute nonsense, Kylie snaps. She practically yells that Lewis has been acting totally unhinged lately. She brings up his creepy zoning out phases. Like just seconds ago, he was leaking this dark, suffocating energy that felt straight up demonic. The pure, unfiltered bloodlust he radiated had her genuinely shaking. The headmaster nods slowly, validating her massive red flags. But he points at the glowing vial. The kid's mana pool is not crashing, it is skyrocketing. He strokes his chin, theorizing that maybe this anomaly is a rare, awakening phase, custom-built for a freak of nature like Lewis. Then a darker thought shadows his eyes. Could this insane power surge be chained to his cursed child lineage? That theory hooks the old man's interest instantly. Leaning in, he presses Lewis to spill every single detail about what he actually feels when he drinks that stuff. The headmaster dives deep into the lore, philosophizing about true enlightenment. He circles back to how the goddess literally dictates the flow of mana. He even starts questioning the system itself, Were mortals and beasts ever meant to wield this kind of godly firepower? After a long, heavy silence, the big boss makes his call. He sighs, admitting that their reality is packed with glitched mechanics and cosmic secrets that completely defy logic. So for now, they are throwing Louis's wild immunity into the unsolved mystery file. No point in jumping to crazy conclusions just yet. Kylie, however, refuses to drop it. She desperately argues that there is a ticking time bomb inside Louis. But the headmaster goes completely stone-faced and turns on his heel. Just a few paces toward the door, he freezes, glancing over his shoulder. He drops some harsh truth. Modern alchemy is basically still in early access. The science of magical brews is full of massive blind spots. Literally no one knows the long-term endgame of these elixirs. Throw Louis's mutated biology into the mix, and the whole formula shatters. Undeterred, Kylie glares, convinced that Louis is absolutely hiding way deeper secrets. Meanwhile, the boy in question is just chilling in the background, absorbing the entire debate while his brain works in overdrive. He cracks the code in his head. The alchemists here are literally just mashing raw, unfiltered ingredients together like cavemen. Obviously, jamming conflicting elemental properties together creates massive toxic blowback. A sly smirk creeps up. If he just isolates the core buffs, strips out the junk data, and brews a hyper-purified drop, boom. He will pinpoint exactly which trash herb is causing the fatal side. Cut to the very next morning. The headmaster calls a private squad meeting with Kylie and Louis. Louis's eyes light up. The old man actually pulled through securing an absolute mountain of ultra-rare crafting loot overnight. Kylie just stares at the chaotic setup. Vials, glowing herbs, and weird instruments scattered everywhere. Totally baffled, she demands to know his game plan. Especially since the headmaster has literally never let anyone treat alchemy like some mad science experiment before. Just hold up and watch, Louis smirks, promising everything will make sense in a second. Without missing a beat, he dives straight into his work. After hours of intense grinding, mixing, and refining the raw materials, he successfully brews up 3 distinct elixirs. He flexes his flawless results, leaving the academy principal absolutely stunned. Jaw practically hitting the floor, the old man realizes Louis just perfectly extracted every single baseline ingredient hidden inside the complex mixture. Right then and there, the principal knows he is looking at a literal god-tier prodigy. Voice shaking with pure hype, he begs to know if Louis would ever consider taking up serious alchemy under his wing. With this kind of broken talent, he promises Louis could easily become an absolute legend in potion crafting. He might even completely eclipse Lady Million herself, a future the principal deadass believes is guaranteed. Playing it cool, Louis bows and says becoming his apprentice would be a massive honor. He fully accepts the offer, making the old man beam with absolute pride. Instantly, the two start geeking out, bonding hardcore over their shared obsession with magical research. Kylie, meanwhile, is completely annoyed, glaring at their sudden bromance from the sidelines. Fast forward to late that night, Louis is pulling an all-nighter diving deep into magical theory and analyzing the true nature of his newly brewed elixirs. It suddenly clicks the raw mana trapped inside those vials actually stems directly from the organic ingredients themselves. Since potions rely on natural herbs, and herbs need soil and water to thrive, he starts connecting the dots. In his head, earth and water aren't just elements. They literally represent life itself. Out of nowhere, an insane epiphany hits him like a freight train. Instantly, a massive chain reaction explodes right across his desk, leaving Kylie up. She genuinely cannot fathom that this mind-bending phenomenon is triggering all over again. Against all odds, Louis achieves yet another profound state of magical enlightenment deep within his core. In a flash, colossal vines and twisted roots violently burst out, swallowing the entire room. The principal watches completely paralyzed as a massive, sprawling forest erupts inside the giant chamber. In his mind, there is zero chance that mere potion magic could ever spawn something this ridiculously overpowered. Cutting through the chaos, Louis calmly states that the true essence of creation, instead, it is the quiet beauty of hydrating the dirt, nurturing a heartbeat, and letting fresh sprouts naturally bloom into reality. Because of this profound truth, Louis officially dubs this crazy new force the wood element. Hearing the phrase wood element for the very first time, Kylie tilts her head in pure confusion. To demonstrate, Louis casually lifts a single finger, forcing a breathtaking flower to instantly blossom right in front of her face. But the second she reaches out to touch it, The flower aggressively blasts toxic pollen ready to strike. Caught totally off guard, she takes the hit, leaving an angry red rash burning across her skin. Without missing a beat, the surrounding vines mutate into terrifying botanical monsters and lunge right at her. Pissed off by the ambush, Kylie instantly ignites her fire magic. Even though she manages to fend them off with a few minor scrapes, a terrifying realization hits her. Lewis isn't just spawning random plants out of thin air. He is literally commanding them as a lethal weapon against his enemies. And the sheer speed of his magical evolution is straight up unbelievable. Chilling like nothing happened, Lewis mentions that weaponizing plants isn't even the wood element's ultimate flex. According to him, its actual god-tier potential is hidden entirely somewhere else. It is the pure, unfiltered power of healing. Hearing this instantly triggers a massive light bulb moment for the principal. If this theory holds up, the core mechanics behind every single health potion and healing salve actually originate. Lewis nods in agreement, confirming that the chances of that being true are astronomically high. He then breaks down the main difference between regular, everyday plants and potent magical elixirs. It all boils down to whether or not raw, elemental properties are actively flowing through them. The principal's hype reaches boiling point. Composite magic elixirs and hardcore alchemy might all be completely intertwined at their very core. Every single branch of this magic might share the exact same foundation. Blown away by this breakthrough, the headmaster doesn't hesitate. He straight up offers to bankroll every single potion ingredient Lewis could ever need. Lewis genuinely bows his head in thanks for the massive support, but the old man just chuckles. He waves off the gratitude, making it clear that if our boy keeps dropping mind-blowing discoveries like this, then the principal is the one who's going. But right before they wrap things up, the headmaster's gaze sharpens. He throws Lewis one last curveball of a question. He drops some heavy wisdom in the human realm. Raw muscle is just a tiny fraction of the whole puzzle. If someone seriously wants the kind of power that can rewrite destiny itself, they have to face some incredibly twisted, complex truths. Truths that hide way past mere brute force. Following that heavy moment, the headmaster leads Lewis deep into the woods. That's where Louis flexes his newly unlocked wood element. In a flash, vibrant life erupts straight out of the dirt beneath their feet. The headmaster's jaw practically hits the floor. No matter how often he sees this crazy phenomenon, it still feels beautifully surreal. Watching ultra-rare herbs sprout like weeds completely effortlessly, it's just insane. And our guy isn't just turning barren dirt into a greenhouse. He's literally spawning edible crops on command, in the blink of an eye. But Louis keeps it real, admitting this trick drains his mana pool way faster than he bargained for. He breaks it down. The top-tier, legendary-grade flora demands an absolute ton of magical energy to synthesize. Thanks to that harsh limit, he confesses that this little forest-spawning stunt is him already redlining his current max output. Well, for now, at least. Yet the headmaster couldn't be more thrilled, falling into deep thought. He realizes that every single miracle in this universe demands some kind of... To him, the real game changer is how ridiculously low that price tag is compared to everyone else. And in Louis' case, the cost is basically a steal way below any... The headmaster then points out the obvious, stripping the toxicity from potions, nuking their side effects, and cooking up entirely brand new recipes, all by weaponizing wood attribute magic. It's an absolute masterclass. He makes it crystal clear this isn't some basic trick any random mage could pull off. This level of god-tier alchemy belongs exclusively to someone with Louis. Fast forward a bit. As they emerge from the woods, we get a massive reveal. They've secretly built a full-blown high-tech laboratory right under the nose of the Candria Arcanist Academy. Tucked away in a massive underground cave network, this hidden bunker is where they brew elite recovery serums. We're talking instant mana replenishers, hardcore physical enhancement elixirs, and even sanity-restoring mental tonics, all part of their relentless experimental grind. The headmaster snatches up one of these freshly brewed vials, his eyes gleaming. It's time to live test the backlash. He smirks, dropping another truth bomb. If Lewis wants to level up, fast, throwing hands with heavy hitters is the ultimate fast track. And what better way to test a combat buff than a no-holds-barred sparring match between the two of them? Lewis's eyes light up immediately. This isn't just a test, it's a golden ticket. Without missing a beat, he dares the old man to go all out. He downs the elixir in one gulp, falling right into a battle stance against the absolute unit of a headmaster. A high-octane clash instantly explodes between the two. Off to the side, Kylie is just paralyzed, watching the absolute chaos unfold. She can't help but think Lewis is an absolute monster. Sure, he's not a villain, and his vibes are purely heroic, but his raw potential and terrifying growth rate, completely freakish. Sometime later, a battered Lewis drags himself back to his dorm to wash off the grime. Letting the hot water run, the reality of the spar sinks in. That crazy old man really didn't pull a single punch. Honestly, if he hadn't pre-gamed with those newly engineered buffs, he'd probably be stuck in a hospital bed for 30 straight days. The beatdown was just that brutal. Chilling on his bed, his mind immediately starts racing, brainstorming what god-tier concoctions to brew up next, always hungering for that next major power spike. But wait, as Lewis steps out into his room, Kara is already chilling there, totally fixated on an empty potion vial. Lewis freezes a massive spike of panic, hitting him. Kara doesn't even blink, just coolly asks, "What on earth is inside this flask?" Scrambling for an alibi, Lewis rapid-fires a lie. He claims it's a safety ward handed down by the headmaster, some highly classified, totally approved alchemy method. Yeah, Kara isn't buying that garbage for a second. Without a word, he closes the distance, marching dead straight toward our guy. Lewis starts sweating bullets, absolutely convinced his secret is busted. But then comes the craziest plot twist. Kara straight up confesses that he was the one who brewed that exact potion. Lewis immediately scrambles to play dumb, brushing off the wild accusations as total nonsense. But let's be real, his poker face is absolutely tragic. The more he rambles, the deeper he digs his own grave. Throwing his hands up, he finally caves. He spills the truth, desperately demanding to know how Kara saw right through his act. Kara just smirks, casually flexing how he tracked every single micro-expression and nervous twitch to piece the puzzle together. That borderline psychic intuition leaves Lewis completely spooked. Swallowing his pride, he begs Kara to keep quiet so he can dodge any messy drama. Right on cue, Kara smoothly whips out a pre-written contract and slides it across the table. Scanning the paperwork, Lewis's jaw drops. The terms are actually a massive flex in his favor. The deal lets them heavily water down the potions before hitting the market. Stashing the glowing elixir away, Kara lays out the game plan. The trading guild handles all the shady logistics, completely wiping Lewis's fingerprints from the operation. Plus, Louis rakes in a massive cut of the profits. Skimming the fine print, Lewis realizes he just struck gold. With Kara backing him, he secures infinite materials VIP protection and absolute freedom to grind out his experiments. He admits the offer is an absolute steal, but he refuses to sign without two major deal breakers. Demand number 1. The elixirs need a massive nerf before hitting the streets just to dodge any chaotic fallout. Demand number 2. The Merchant Guild must actively pump funds into his childhood orphanage. Without missing a single beat, Kara agrees, scribbling the new clauses straight onto the parchment before sliding it back. Pens hit paper. They both sign on the dotted line, officially locking in an unstoppable new alliance. Packing up, Louis yawns, mentioning he needs to crash early so he can prep a fresh batch tomorrow. Kara silently tracks his exit before slipping back into the empty dorm room. But the second the coast is clear, 2 elite assassins disguised as pigeons breach the room, instantly diving for Kara's blind spot. Even with zero sound, Kara's god-tier reflexes instantly kick in, flawlessly blocking the lethal strike. One of the shadows completely loses it, absolutely baffled that The second assassin instantly bows an apology for the jump scare, explaining they only crashed the room to drop off some highly classified intel. Massive plot twist. Kara is actually a girl completely faking her identity just to survive inside the brutal academy. She casually tosses the freshly signed contract straight to her 2 loyal subordinates. They scan the paper, looking utterly bewildered. Why would she hand a god-tier deal to some random kid like Lewis? One of them points out that if this crazy hustle actually works, their guild will absolutely dominate the entire Eastern economy. The other agrees, totally mind-blown, but questions how a literal kid could even mastermind a setup this complex. Kara just smirks to herself, fully aware that Lewis's hidden potential is terrifyingly off the charts. But the assassins drop a heavy reality check. What if Louis eventually backstabs them and joins forces with a rival royal heir? Kara's eyes darken as she replies. That is exactly why she is handing them a highly specific mission. She orders them to completely lock down his childhood orphanage, She knows Louis is fundamentally a softie at heart, and his genuine kindness is something worth guarding. Commands locked in, she dismisses them. The duo instantly shapeshifts back into pigeons and vanishes into the dark sky. Kara stares up at the glowing moon, her mind racing. The brutal midterm exams are basically right around the corner. They desperately need to step on the gas. Right now, her one ultimate gamble is that Louis will finally drop his mask and reveal his true identity to the royal heir.